Here we go on a Wednesday morning. It is June 18th, 2025. Another one of those mornings powered by Up North News. I'm Pat Kreitlow here on Lake Wissota. Nice to have you along. Coming up today, we're going to talk about how the Wisconsin Supreme Court had a unanimous ruling. That's not easy to do. This court is extremely split between its progressive and conservative members, and yet they all agreed that part of the Republican 2018 lame duck limits on the state attorney general's office are no bueno. Can't do them. Took 6.5 years, but they finally came up with that. So we'll explain what it is that Republicans did that was such egregious overreach on behalf of the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin. In our 7 o'clock hour, we'll talk to the finance director of the Eau Claire School District about what the legislature's Joint Finance Committee, the Republicans there, are doing about the gap in special education funding between public schools and voucher schools. Spoiler alert, they're not really making the gap any narrower, even though they could. In our 3rd hour, we'll talk about the big bloated boondoggle of a budget bill working its way through Congress. It includes cuts to tax credits that could create a new generation of clean energy jobs. Republicans are suddenly having second thoughts about the bill. Not the part about, killing Medicaid practically and all that stuff, but, at least protecting the tax credits that some corporations would use to create those clean energy jobs. So we'll talk to Melissa Baldoff about that. If you missed Dan Schaefer at 8:30 yesterday, we'll play a little bit of it back at 6:30 as well. We'll talk to Earl Ingram, James Kelly, so much more all ahead on this Wednesday morning starting at 6:06 across the Civic Media Radio Network and right here on social media, where we have Danielle saying, hey, happy Wednesday, everyone. Yeah, same to you. Back in a bit.
Across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06. It's a Wednesday morning, June 18th, 2025. It's another beautiful morning, a little foggy, but beautiful to have you here up north. Live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're spending your mornings listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, or listening or watching us on all of our different platforms. Thanks for starting your day right here. That might include the Up North News Facebook page, where here's my first question for you. What's your life like if you're so grouchy that at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to put a comment up on somebody's Facebook going, "It has to hurt to be such a leftist hack. No sane person wants the left anywhere near power. And yet you want to be near us." That's adorable. Thank you for that comment. I mean, it's gone already, but you took the time to have some coffee and put up that little thing. Maybe coffee isn't such a great thing after all, Parker Olson, standing by in Madison A2. I don't know. I'd like to think coffee would help that person, whoever that is, but you know.
I like to think that person just needs to have a little reality check. That's what I think. I don't think it's the coffee, Pat.
It was a last-minute replacement to my original question. Doesn't it seem wrong that a Florida hockey team has won the Stanley Cup again over a team from Canada?
Yes.
I mean, and I'd be saying that even if I hadn't spent the weekend in Canada with friends. I've been saying this for a long time. And again, it all started with some guy dragging the Minnesota North Stars down to Texas. Okay, I'm never going to root for a hockey team in Texas. But then you put one in Florida. Now there's two in Florida. And
they've both won championships fairly frequently for the last couple of years. Yeah.
Right. And in Canada, not so much. So it just feels a little off. But I mean, if you really want things to feel off in the world of sports, the Brewers lost to the Cubs, which again that's just wrong. But the Cubs are in first place. That's the way things are going right now in the season.
That's kind of the annoying thing, is that the Cubs are actually very good.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
That's all. It's annoying. It's annoying. You look over at Craig Counsell and he's just smirking over there in the dugout. And you're like, yeah, well, you know. It's like,
hey, good on Craig. He didn't get ejected last night. I'm proud of him for that. He got ejected 2 games in a row like last week.
Little victories for Craigers there. Coming up on the program today, the Republican-led legislature fell all over itself after the 2018 election to undermine Tony Evers and Josh Kaul even before they took office. They met in a lame duck session to strip away powers from the incoming governor and attorney general, and it has taken 6.5 years. But on Tuesday, a unanimous Wisconsin Supreme Court started taking steps to let lawmakers know that there are still 3 co-equal branches of government. We'll have more to say about that. We are, of course, tracking the progress of the next state budget bill through the Joint Finance Committee in the legislature, including some recent talk of punishing cuts to the University of Wisconsin system and recent moves about the gap between how Republicans support special education in voucher schools versus public schools. We'll talk to a school district finance director about the strain that gap puts on all property taxpayers in the state. The president's big bloated boondoggle of a budget bill working its way through the Senate not only has massive cuts to Medicaid and other vital programs, it also tries to kill the tax credits that could create a new generation of clean energy jobs. The Republicans are suddenly having second thoughts. Not about protecting health care or any of that stuff, but at least protecting the tax credits that benefit their corporate friends who could create those new energy jobs in their states. We'll talk to Melissa Baldoff about that. We'll talk to Earl Ingram with a preview of tomorrow's Juneteenth celebration in Milwaukee and elsewhere. James Kelly will talk to us about stories he's covering across western and northern Wisconsin. And it's Wednesday, so it wouldn't be Wednesday without a visit from Melissa Kay in our Wisconsin Rapids station, because, I mean, we put big money into the production of this jingle, so we are going to fly this pigeon right into the ground. It will be time for Pigeon Quest! When will the day come that she just doesn't show up on Wednesday mornings? Because, or when's the day where she shows up and there is a pigeon on her shoulder?
That's my question, because I think we're getting very close to her having
one or the other
just on her finger. She's going to pop into the call and have a pigeon just sitting on her finger there.
I hope so.
And we're going to go, wow.
Yes.
She actually managed to get a pigeon and not get robbed.
She got a pigeon. And look, she's training it so well. It's already doing tricks. It's holding up a little pigeon middle finger at me for making all the KFC jokes. So
and it's wearing pants.
And it's wearing pigeon pants. I still don't know if she's being on the up and up with us because honestly, I haven't cared enough about pigeon pants to Google them and see if they're a thing. But Melissa will give. Oh wait, you did?
Oh yeah, I did.
So pigeon pants are real.
Pigeon pants are real and they're spectacular.
You can text or comment on pigeon pants or any of the weighty topics of the day. 855-75-CIVIC, 855-752-4842. Use that Civic Media app as well, or put a comment on Facebook or YouTube. Maybe have your coffee first before you unleash any venom. Though I will say, well, first I'll say our email address is radio@upnorthnewswi.com. You can send a comment that way. I will say that I got a little personal in one of my posts yesterday because, we've got our question of the week from our Sunday newsletter, and that is, should Governor Evers run for a third term? And I took the time to put into this post saying, hey, it's Pat here. Answer the question. Keep your venom to yourself. We don't need the insults. We don't need the memes. You should see the memes that people work on, political memes that they think are so funny, but I mean, they're funny to Beavis and Butthead and not too many other people. I'm like, just don't. And when I looked at Facebook last night and I could see that post was already approaching 200 comments, I was like, as I put in the post, I said, the nice thing about our delete button is it's never off duty. We got no problem weeding the garden over here. And so I thought, well, okay, here we go. And actually it wasn't too bad. And that includes all the people that don't want Tony Evers to run. That includes the people that don't like Tony Evers. And they by and large, avoided the personal insults. I mean, they would say things like, this state's gone to hell or something like that. But I mean, you're not going to get deleted for that. It was the really personal stuff that some people just feel like this is their outlet for it, is, the comment sections. And I was just like, I don't want to play that game with this because a question like that invites all the invectives and everything. But folks, by and large, even if they weren't Tony Evers fans, they just they played by the rules, said what they want to say, and we will have the answers later on in the week about what people are saying about whether Governor Tony Evers should run for a third term. We talked to Dan Schaefer about that yesterday in our 8:30 half hour. So if you missed that, we'll play a little bit of it back here coming up at 6:30 as he covered the state Democratic convention. And let me remind you that our Sunday morning newsletter, Sunday Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, is now available at upnorthnewswi.com. Click subscribe in the top banner on our website, and you can get our Monday through Friday newsletter as well, and Christina Laurie's new sports-themed newsletter on Saturdays. I'll tell you more about what's in the newsletter today, right after I tell you Brittany Merlot's state forecast for today. She says showers and storms are spreading into the state as low pressure swirls by to the south of us, with some rounds of rain expected to remain the rest of this week. And then a hot and humid weekend sits on the horizon. So for today, rain especially over the southeastern half of Wisconsin, substantial in spots, she says. Some spotty showers and thunderstorms everywhere else by midday, highs today in the mid-70s, a northeast wind at 5 to 10 miles an hour. Rain ending early, partial clearing overnight, lows in the low 50s up north, near 60 in the south, a north wind at 5 to 10 miles an hour. All right, in the daily newsletter that Christina Laurie puts together, of course, her June Dairy Month story is about the Wisconsin Center for Dairy Research. Did you ever wonder how microbes affect the safety, the quality, the texture, and the flavor of cheese? Of course not, but other people do. How about how bacteria can affect different types of cheese? How do you extend a cheese's shelf life? This is what the cheese nerds do at the Wisconsin Center for Dairy Research, and we are far healthier and better for their work, and you can read more about it. She's got an article on Colby cheese. I've been through Colby many a time. I've been in the Colby parade when it was in my state Senate district. None of it's going to get me to really like Colby cheese, but it was invented there, and a lot of people do like it. And there's even tips on how to serve it and get the most out of Colby cheese. And also an article on Door County fish boils and where to find some of the really good ones. So again, all of that is in our newsletter. Sign up at upnorthnewswi.com. I forgot to mention to you, Parker, that when I was in Regina over the weekend, looking at the flatness of the Saskatchewan prairie, there actually was a natural feature that they went out of their way to show me. All kinds of mounds about 10, 12 feet high.
Okay.
Taking up an entire city block. And our hosts, our friends said, guess what those are? And my first thought was they look like big piles of wood chips. He said, no. I said, how about compost? No, it wasn't that either. Was it sand, for plowing the streets? So no, you're close. Those are all the snow piles that are still melting up there. I mean, like I said, an entire city block of mounds, 10, 12 feet high. And of course, all the schmutz from the roads, all the dirt and all that stuff is on top of the snow. And so it's kind of keeping it insulated. So that's why it's melting slower. It is slowly melting. But yeah, there's still snow piles up there.
I wonder how long that's going to take to go away completely.
Just in time for the first flakes, if I know anything about weather in Canada. The other thing I will say about being up there with these folks, friendliest people. Again, the Canadians. When our flight was canceled on Sunday, do you know, unlike in any other American airport, your flight is canceled. It's the only way out of town that day. You had to wait 24 hours. Not one person lost their minds and blew up at the ticket agent or the gate agents there. Everybody was just very like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to cancel my flight. It must have been my fault. Just the nicest. It was such a change of pace. It was just really nice to see. So it's good to know that, again, unlike our first commenter online this morning, we can be friendly all the time if we choose to be. We just have to choose to be.
Maybe you just need to be eating more maple syrup and more poutine, and then you're nice.
Poutine. That's it. That's it. Poutine. I'm happy to add that to my diet much more often. And then Derek Van Orden can make more fat jokes, which is fine. As I mentioned, the Cubs beat the Brewers 5-3. The Cubs have upped their division lead to 6.5 games over the second place Brewers, who've won the NL Central each of the past 2 years. Isaac Collins hit a 2-run homer for Milwaukee coming up tonight. Jacob Mizorowski will make his second major league pitching start tonight for the Brewers, and you can catch the pregame starting at 6:30 on several Civic Media stations. Head over to civicmedia.us to learn much more. Boy, we have got a lot coming up for you today, all from the heart of America's up north, live from Lake Wissota. So thank you for making this the place to spend a part of your mornings. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. a couple of minutes here and talk about what's called the power of the purse in government, your tax dollars and how they're allocated. I don't know if you paid attention to rallies this past weekend, but in America, we don't have kings. We give the power of the purse to our elected officials in Congress and in our legislature to write up budgets. A president or a governor can sign or veto them in certain ways. And then once that budget is signed, it is up to the president or governor in the executive branch to dole out those funds. In some cases, without meddling from the other branch of government, as long as the executive branch doesn't meddle in what the legislative branch is doing. And I've got two examples to tell you about at the state and federal level that illustrate what's going on in our state and in our country today. You know how divided the Wisconsin Supreme Court is right now with its 4 progressives and its 3 conservative justices. Hard to imagine they'd agree on much. But there was a unanimous ruling yesterday, 7-0, striking down some of what Republican legislators did in 2018. To take you back then, Tony Evers had just beaten Scott Walker, who was running for a 3rd term as governor. And Josh Kaul had won the race for Attorney General, J.B. Van Hollen, if memory serves. It's been a while now. So they'd won their elections, Kaul and Evers, in November. They weren't going to take the oath of office, of course, until, January 3rd? So in the weeks afterwards, the legislature met. The Republicans called themselves in. When that happens after an election, but before they're all done with the term, that's called a lame duck session. Because, again, they're supposed to have all the power of a lame duck. But actually, they still can set laws if the outgoing executive, in this case Governor Scott Walker, is willing to sign them. And so the legislators stripped away some powers from the governor and from the attorney general. And Scott Walker could have stood up for the dignity of the office that he was leaving. He could have said, no, this may be passed by my Republican friends in the legislature, but I have to stand here for the integrity of the governor's office. Oh, no, come on. We're talking about Scott Walker. He signed those in a heartbeat, and out the door he went, taking powers away from Tony Evers and Josh Kaul. We won't dwell on the governor part of it. We still have Republicans controlling the legislature, and they're still holding up well more than 100 nominations from Governor Evers and have all these other restrictions. But this Supreme Court ruling yesterday was about the Attorney General's office, and the court ruling unanimously that the legislature, through its Joint Finance Committee, does not have the authority to approve settlement agreements made by the State Department of Justice in certain types of cases. So sometimes when there are lawsuits involving state government, the Attorney General represents the state, and sometimes there are settlements in those cases. The Joint Finance Committee, the Republicans, were saying, well, the Attorney General can't do any of those things, reach a settlement without our say-so because, we have the power of the purse. And in an initial challenge back when the state Supreme Court had a conservative majority, the conservative justices agreed with that Republican point of view, saying, yep, the legislature has the power of the purse, and so they should have some say-so when the executive branch, through the Attorney General, is settling cases. But even back then, they said, that's how it is overall, but we're not saying there wouldn't be instances where that wouldn't be appropriate. And finally came some ways in which that would apply. For example, there could be settlements that involve civil enforcement or actions that other state agencies in the executive branch ask the Department of Justice to pursue. And in those cases, you really do have an executive branch that is no longer dependent on the power of the purse. They're funded, and they're going to go do their thing on behalf of the people of Wisconsin. And in this latest case, this is where the state Supreme Court said that these types of enforcement, like for environmental cases, consumer protection cases, lawsuits over a breach of contract, financial regulation, all of these things outlined in the Wisconsin Examiner article by Henry Redmond. All of these things are at the core of executive branch power. And you know who wrote that? It wasn't one of the progressive justices. It was one of the conservatives, Justice Brian Hagedorn. And the other conservative justices agreed that in those cases, the legislature can't put guardrails. They can't intervene in the settlement process. Now, this isn't the world's biggest deal, of course, but it's a sign that no matter how much some politicians try to grab power, at some point, balance is going to be restored. You're going to have Supreme Court justices in this case who will point out where there has been an overreach. But it didn't come for 6 years, and it didn't come for several elections until you, the voters, got involved and handed the Supreme Court back to a progressive majority that would hear those arguments and convince the conservative justices to come along. Meanwhile, on the national side of things, you have President Trump again saying he's going to extend the lifetime of TikTok and not face a ban. But the thing is, that ban was passed by Congress. It's the thing that he's supposed to be enforcing, and he's saying, no, I just won't enforce it. And Congress just lets him, as happens in dictatorships. You've got a president who's willing to drag the U.S. into a Middle East war now with Iran, ignoring the War Powers Act. Congress just lets him. That's what happens in dictatorships. And now Trump is trying to use something called pocket rescission to once again cut spending that has been approved by Congress. But he is ignoring the law and not letting Congress have the power of the purse. And Congress just lets him. Kind of thing that happens in dictatorships. We'll have an update on the Trump big bloated budget bill and what's being said about that as well throughout the course of the morning. First, we're going to have the Midwest Farm Report, and then we're going to hear from Dan Schaefer on these mornings powered by Up North News on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow. I feel like we're messing with Tony at this point. He's just like, hey, wait, where's everybody? Isn't there a secret show? Where'd you go? Where are they? You guys got to say something.
They just disappeared.
They just looks like they don't. What do they do? They're not being funny. They're not being sarcastic. They're not doing anything. This is making you crazy, Tony. Is it? Huh?
I like your morning ASMR, Tony.
It's like a private show for one viewer out there. Tony, I would have gotten him away if it weren't for those meddling politicians.
Oh, rats.
I sleep for 20 extra minutes and nothing. It's bananas. See? Sometimes you need a good night's sleep. Which is probably why I'm not as chatty as I used to be. I could use a better night's sleep right now, but that's how it goes.
What happened? Were you up watching that Stanley Cup?
No, I was not. Nope. So, let's see. Oh, look, here's another comment. Look, more brain dead reporting from Up North News. Oh my God, thank you for coming to watch us. What a waste of what a waste of your time.
We appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your view, boosting our numbers and commenting, which really helps actually.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, when you put the comments on, it boosts our engagement, Oh no, now it's messing with Roger too. It's quiet. It's too quiet. Do you understand what a damning indictment this is of Greg Bach right now? when he's here and he's just talking and it's just so boisterous and you can't help but follow along. And Parker and I are just kind of like, yeah, I know. We're getting our mornings done.
Good morning.
Gotta sip our coffee over here. I gotta delete comments. What we need is, here, Roger, this is just for you. It's quiet, too quiet. Roger, it's quiet because I'm used to getting like music trivia from you or little sports observations or something. So, come on, Roger. Help.
It's not all on us.
Helps out. Yeah. So on YouTube, want to watch a Republican's programming explode? Ask them to name 3 characteristics of due process. Yeah, well, that tracks. I guess I haven't clicked on it, but I guess there's some kind of thing where Tucker Carlson just lays into Ted Cruz about something, just shows a real split in the ranks. I haven't seen what it is, but the fact that you're seeing so many Republicans saying no, we don't want to go to war with Iran. I mean,
I was reading about that this morning.
They remember the Gulf War. They remember all this stuff. And it's like they've seen pretty much every Republican president end up getting entangled into something in the Middle East, and they're like, let's not do that this time. It sounds like Trump wants to do it this time too. So I'm not surprised to hear some folks speaking up and going, can we not? It'd
be cool if we didn't.
Yeah. By the way, Friday, how's this for a triple whammy? Jim Santel has a court date, and Mark Jacob is on the road, and Jennifer Schulze is on the road. So we will not have our usual Week in Review panel in the 7 a.m. hour, but we will have Joan Esposito. Just Joan, who's got her own afternoon radio show in Chicago and is going to come join us here in Little, Wisconsin and just spend the 7 a.m. hour with us. So that'll be nice. And also Kia Vakil is on vacation, but we are pursuing a really good guest for 6:30 on Friday. So Friday schedule's a little unusual. Kristen Lyerly will still be in at 8:05, which also makes it unusual. Roger, nothing good in my Facebook memories unless you want Sammy Davis Jr.'s The Candyman being at number 1 for the second week. It's right up there with the Ides of March and vehicle, I got candy, get in my vehicle. I'm the Candyman. Music is a little different now. I'm not saying better, just a little less, obvious. All right. Let's get to Dan. It's a Wednesday morning. It is June 18th, 2025. Welcome back to Mornings, powered by Up North News on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Nice to have you along. And again, since we expanded the show to 3 hours, and we know not everybody can sit around and catch, all 12 segments. No, 12 segments that we do throughout the course of the day. You might miss one or two here or there. So occasionally we'll play some of the 8:30 ones back in the 6:30 half hour. And why wouldn't you do that with Dan Schaefer, political director at Civic Media and founder of the Recombobulation Area? And he covered the state Democratic Convention. He also had that column about whether Governor Tony Evers should run for a third term. In fact, I just wrote an article over at upnorthnewswi.com about that same topic. It does not, unlike Dan, who takes a position on the question, I don't. I reference his article and some of the other reactions to it, and then, ask, what do you think? Do you think the governor should run for a third term? Anyway, so we talked about that with Dan, but he mentioned having an upcoming column on convention observations. And so I started yesterday's conversation by asking him to share a couple of those observations with us.
I had an opportunity to interview the keynote speaker for the event, Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock. So go check that one out at the Recombobulation Area. And then I wrote a story about the chair vote on Sunday with Devin Remaker coming out ahead over Joe Zepecki and William Garcia. It did go to a second round of in the ranked choice vote there, which I thought was pretty interesting. But so you can read that there. And I'm also writing a kind of a longer, what Recombobulation Area readers will be accustomed to reading after big events that I cover. 10 takeaways is typically what I will do there. And I'm finishing that up now. It was my number one takeaway on the list as I'm going through it here, it was really the Ben Wickler show. It was, Ben Wickler celebrating the end of his run, his 6 years as chair of the state Democratic Party. He took the stage. I lost count of how many different times that he took the stage over the course of the week. Obviously, some ceremonial duties bringing it in and out, but he also delivered a 17-minute speech of his own, really powerful one. He also joined Senator Tammy Baldwin during her primetime address to kind of have a conversation between the two of them instead of just hearing the senator speak. And, so much of what was talked about was, just the last 6 years of his leadership, and what that has meant to transform the party. And I think in so many ways, if we look from 2010 to 2018 in Wisconsin politics, we can characterize that as the Walker era. Perhaps 2019 to 2025 could be characterized as the Wickler era.
Oh, I think that's entirely fair. And that is not a knock on Tammy Baldwin or Mark Buchan or Gwen Moore or anybody else. But I mean, it is a pace that he set. It is, a fundraising era of productivity that will probably be unmatched in state Democratic Party history. And look, I know at a convention, folks are naturally upbeat, even Democrats. Sometimes they do form circular firing squads and things like that, which is why I asked this question. Yes, they celebrated Ben Wickler. Did you feel like the delegates were in a healthy place going forward, or did you get a sense that there was a lot of, woe is me, Ben Wickler's going, the party is going to lose momentum and things like that?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of optimism. I think, just from throughout the weekend, I think, even though there was a lot of competition especially between the top two candidates, Remacher and Zepecki in the race, I think most people liked both of the candidates and just had to decide which of the two candidates they liked more. But I also think, it's just, yes, they're Wicklers are big shoes to fill. And as I grabbed a quote from the Wisdom's treasurer. I don't know how many other people were taking note of that particular speech in the convention, but Treasurer Randy Udell, who is also a state representative, he said that the party operated at an unprecedented scale in 2024, raising nearly $70 million, saying this performance exceeded that of any state party across the country. So that is quite the legacy to leave with the party and some big shoes to fill. But I think overall, the mood, I think the spring election results have absolutely reinvigorated the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. I do wonder what this convention would have been like had that election not happened, had it been, just coming off of the loss against Donald Trump last fall, if that was the main topic that people were thinking about. But I think with the spring election, any mention of Susan Crawford, any mention of defeating Elon Musk got just raucous applause in the building. So I think that those results from April, certainly had an impact nationally, but obviously had a clear impact on the state of mind from Wisconsin Democrats. That's for sure.
We're talking to Dan Schaefer from the Recombobulation area and Civic Media's political editor from Tony Up and National on YouTube. I think the next era could be Representative Mark Buchan, really liking what he's doing recently. Bernie Sanders even mentioned him as someone to watch. That wouldn't surprise me. And I think part of that, I'm not giving Derek Van Orden credit here, but could be the Van Orden effect where Mark Buchan felt like, well, somebody's got to stand up to this guy, or he's just going to bully his way through and truly be Wisconsin's next Joseph McCarthy. So, but it's not just Van Orden. Mark Buchan has been increasingly vocal about what the progressive caucus among House Democrats should want and what they stand for.
Yeah, he's been, I think his profile is certainly rising in a number of ways. He's had some high profile moments questioning members of the Trump administration. And yes, he was there at the convention this weekend. He delivered a speech too. He talked about, dealing with Derek Van Orden and how Mark Buchan of the 2nd district, has held more town halls in the 3rd district than Derek Van Orden has this year. So he's really making an effort there to, really put Mr. Van Orden on notice, and boy, doesn't he need it. You and I know that well.
Oh, do we ever? So you wrote this column last week asking if Governor Tony Evers should run for a 3rd term. At any point, were any food products thrown at you during the convention, or people just coming up to you just to boo? Anything like that? How were you received in the Dells this weekend?
There was a lot of feedback about that column. I will say that a lot of the conversations that I had were off the record, so I'm not going to share any of the details with that. But I do think there were a lot of people who I would say are more receptive to it than what you might see publicly right now. I'll just say that. But didn't have any problems with the food and the drinks and all that. Didn't wake up with any arrows in my back or anything like that. It's one thing to to write a column like this, calling for a very well liked Democrat to step aside and not seek another term right before the convention. But people can disagree without being disagreeable. I think there are a lot of issues that are fake both sides conversation. I think this is an actual both sides conversation. I think this is one that, I think there can be a case to be made that Evers is the right person to run again. And obviously I made the case that he'd be better off passing the torch. Evers did not give any indication on what he's going to do in his he had a fairly short speech, about between 10 and 15-minute speech that he delivered at the convention. Obviously he had a presence there. He had an ice cream hospitality suite going during the afternoon of the convention, very on brand for the governor. But there was really no indication of whether or not he would be running, even though the theme of the convention overall was the road to 2026. So I think clearly it's going to be a big question going forward. The party had some decisions to make this weekend. This was kind of definitely had people talking. This column did, but any takes on it, might be forthcoming in the weeks ahead. Who knows, though?
It was it's a very earnest question, and some very earnest emails have come in. We made it our question of the week in our Sunday morning newsletter. Should Governor Evers run for a third term? Folks can respond to it themselves by sending us an email, radio@upnorthnewswi.com. And I read through some of them yesterday, and I will through the course of the week again, but I just wanted to second that note that this is something that people feel very genuine about. I won't say strongly. It's probably something they weren't thinking much about until recently, but they have some very genuine feelings about, whether he should or should not run for another term. And for folks saying, well, is this going to have an impact on next year's race? I would point out that the election is still, just under a year and a half away. This convention weekend will be a distant memory by that point.
That's true. And, the governor has said that he's going to make this decision after the budget process is over. There's some things we could talk about when it comes to the budget process.
But wait, there's the budget process. We started the program this morning with that social media post from Chris Kappinga from Waukesha County saying, well, if I got to vote for what joint finance my fellow Republicans are giving me, well, maybe I just would rather not have a budget at all. I think to a degree that's actually telegraphing what Republicans might want to do. And I'm giving you all of 30 seconds to tell me if you think it's a real possibility or not that Republicans would just not send the governor a budget.
I think it's interesting. We also saw how the Scott Walker boosted that comment from Chris Kappinga on his social media feed as well. So that's interesting. We've heard before that they might need Democratic votes in the state Senate to pass a budget. Maybe they just don't even pass a budget at all.
That was Dan Schaefer visiting with us yesterday. You'll hear him Tuesdays at 8:30 here on Mornings, powered by Up North News. And I guess, look, I'm not trying to complicate the discussion. I just thought that it was interesting that people seem to be going in one direction, which was, well, if a couple of Republicans don't like what joint finance is going to do, they're going to need Democratic votes in order to pass something. Well, that would have been the case in Congress, but here they don't have to pass a state budget. And so that to me might be a head fake about needing Democratic support when they might just let this thing go and roll the dice and take their chances. But on the DC side of things, the Senate is now taking up Trump's big bloated boondoggle of a budget bill. And Senate Republicans have been hearing a lot from people unhappy with the degree of cuts in there, especially to Medicaid, but many other things as well. And Senate Republicans listened and have made the cuts even deeper in their version that came out yesterday. But they also undid something the House wanted to cut, and that would be the tax credits for creating a whole new generation of clean energy jobs. Now, this is something where somebody like a Tom Tiffany has been saying that the entire Inflation Reduction Act should be repealed so that, big oil can have whatever it wants. There shouldn't be any solar or wind in Tom Tiffany's view of things. Fortunately, there are some brighter people in Congress who understand everything from climate to job creation and to tax credits, and they want those preserved. But in order to do that, it means even deeper cuts for things like Medicaid. Ron Johnson has taken a look at the first draft of the Senate Republican budget, and he's doing the same thing that he did 8 years ago. He's saying, nope, not going to be part of this. I don't support it. Trump and other Republicans had to come to him and say, what do you want to get your support on this bill? And he says, oh, it puts too much on the deficit. But if you give me a special carve out for pass-through corporations, I'll support it. And he did. And it blew a $2 trillion hole in the deficit. This new bill would blow anywhere from a $3 to $5 trillion hole in the deficit. And Ron Johnson currently says he's a no. Stay tuned to find out what he's going to ask for in return. We're going to visit with Melissa Kay coming up as part of today's history lesson, as we always do at this time of the mornings, up north and live here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Follow what we do at upnorthnewswi.com. Subscribe to those newsletters. We'll check Melissa Kay's quest for a pet pigeon after this. And now, the moment of truth. Oh, no, there's no pigeon up on her shoulder there. She's muted, so we can't even hear her laughing about it. It's just...
Sorry. I really wasn't saying much. I'm just... Okay. I love that they send me an updated email on Tuesday night.
Oh, this is so perfect. Okay.
Yes.
Well, and so you got to hold it in for 3 more minutes and then share the news. This is going to be so great. Look at you, you're bursting over there. Do you have stuff at the radio station that we should be talking about today?
We're going to do a live remote this weekend at Cranberry Blossom Fest. We can talk about that.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Glad you said that, because we were actually looking to, I might be recording a segment on the Cranberry Blossom Fest.
Oh, cool.
I'm waiting to hear back. So, but we're gonna.
Who are you talking with?
I don't know. Luke is trying to set up something because our Friday guests are on the road this week, so we needed somebody else. So I might be pre-recording something for Friday's show.
Gotcha.
So is Cranberry Blossom Fest a big deal?
It's a big deal.
Okay. All right.
Yep. It's like a 3-day event.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I got nothing else for cranberry blossoms. I'm sure they're delicious.
Cranberries are amazing.
Well, yeah, you can do almost anything with them.
And they're a superfood.
With enough sugar, yeah. So, and what about you? Are you doing anything fun?
I've been redoing our shirts into dresses for my niece. I have one.
Isn't that ever cool?
You want to see it?
Yes. Oh,
nice.
That's really nice.
Yeah, it's a t-shirt and now it's a dress.
Oh, wow. Can I send you some shirts for my granddaughter?
Maybe.
That's very cool.
I was up way too late last night.
Yeah. Yeah, some people really like to do that. I got a story from Selena Heller saying, "Can you edit this?" And it came at 3:20 this morning. I'm like,
oof.
Yeah. We're gonna have a talk with her. Can't do your homework that late at night. All right, let's see. We got 45 seconds coming back, so we'll put this here. We'll put this here, and we'll get going in a bit.
Okay.
Remember that viral video that accompanied this song, Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, the guy on a skateboard drinking his cranberry juice and he starts singing? Speaking of cranberry juice, Melissa Kay is here, and we're going to talk about the Cranberry Blossom Festival in Wisconsin Rapids, among other things. Right after I tell you that song, Fleetwood Mac's Dreams, was the #1 song this week in 1977. One more history note before we get to Melissa here. On this day in 1873, Susan B. Anthony was fined $100. That was a lot of money back then. Fined $100 for attempting to vote in the 1872 presidential election. How dare those women try to vote? And look where we are now. We've got women who are not only voting, but becoming big-time radio stars. And before we get to the Cranberry Blossom Festival in Wisconsin Rapids, of course it's Wednesday. Of course it's Melissa. Of course she's excited because it's time for this week's installment of Pigeon Quest. We spare no expense.
So much. You guys, I showed that out to everybody.
Oh, that's so nice. And we've made you sit here all throughout the commercial break. You've been just dying to tell us the news because apparently, once again, your email machine went off last night. And
yes, I love that they send it to me on Tuesdays.
We don't know, so let's do it. What's
okay.
new?
Okay, so they are so happy for Paint Bucket. Paint Bucket's the winner. I'm getting Paint Bucket.
You're getting Paint Bucket?
Yes. And they ship them by mail. So I'm gonna have to go to the post office to pick up Paint Bucket. That's gonna be shipped. But she said that they have the special relationship with their local place and it's all fine.
Parker? I don't know how I feel about this.
Okay, so my feeling is
Paint Bucket's in jeopardy. You in danger, girl. You're in danger.
Oh yeah, that part's not great. My thinking is, imagine walking out of the
Tony,
post office.
I was
holding
pulling
a
for
pigeon.
Paint Bucket. Yes, I know.
In a box. It will be in a box that has holes
Pigeon
in it.
in a box.
But you're not going to contain you're
That
going to
was
open that box in the paint.
The second.
Oh no, I'm not opening it in the car.
That was the second choice for an SNL skit. Pigeon in a box. Paint Bucket. Wow.
So Paint Bucket could be here as soon as they're going to ship it on Monday.
Okay.
So by next Wednesday, I could have a pigeon.
You're so excited about this. You know who's
so
not excited? Do you know the saddest creature on this planet right now is little Bell Pepper, little Pep, who didn't make the cut and isn't going to be living with Melissa. Not yet, anyway. Because,
We'll start with one.
Much like cat ladies, bird ladies, they got to get their start somewhere. And
come on. Now, actually, no, that's not true.
Tony asks, have you pigeon-proofed your place yet? Yes, we've discussed this.
A little bit, yes.
Yep.
I still need to check my plants because I don't know if any of them are, hazardous to my newly arrived friend.
Paint Bucket.
My co-worker.
Oh no!
No.
Well, if that wasn't a clue to get back to the history lesson, I don't know what was. Let's celebrate the birthday of Tommy Hunt, who was born this day in 1933, member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as a member of the Flamingos.
My love was the kind of blind love.
Now, I did not know this, but Tommy Hunt from the Flamingos actually passed away back in mid-February, that week that I was away on vacation. February 15th, he passed away at the age of 91. So I love this version of it, though. I mean, Art Garfunkel has a really cool version of I Only Have Eyes for You, but the Flamingos, to me, this is the best one. On this day in 1948, Columbia Records introduced the long-playing record album and a public demonstration at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. Also born this day, composer Sammy Kahn was born in 1913, passed away in 1993. Songs include Let It Snow, Let It Snow, Let It Snow. A lot of Sinatra tunes, Love and Marriage, Love is the Tender Trap, My Kind of Town, Chicago, and one of my favorites here, Sinatra singing a Sammy Kahn classic with Count Basie and his orchestra.
Come fly with me, we'll fly away. If you can use some
Melissa, I got to send you this album, or just have you download it. Frank Sinatra, Live at the Sands. Best album. Just the best. On this day in 1983, Sally Ride became America's first astronaut in space. Happy birthday to Blake Shelton. He is 49 years old today.
She likes hearing how good she looks in them blue jeans. Little kisses sweeter than sweet tea.
I thought he was older than that.
Yeah, I would think so too, but no, 1976. So yeah, next year would be his 50th birthday. He just looks, ridden hard and put away wet is all that it is.
Gotta have that for a country.
Happy birthday to Nathan Morris, a founding member of Boys to Men, who is 54 years old today. And finally, Sir Paul McCartney, one of the Beatles, is 83 years old today. There's all kinds of Beatles songs I could put up here to market, but Melissa's here. We like to have fun. Paul McCartney has fun. He likes to write those silly love songs. So, happy birthday, 83 years old, Paul McCartney today. Today is International Day for Countering Hate Speech. So go to Derek Van Orden's Twitter feed and say something in response today. It's interesting that today is National Clean Your Aquarium Day, and it's also National Fishing Day. I don't think the two are related, but you never know. Melissa Kay from WFHR 97.5 and, of course, 105.5 WIRI, and soon-to-be pigeon parent of Paint Bucket.
I don't know if the name's going to stay, but soon to be.
Okay. So, no, I'm not going to say it. No more KFC jokes. Got to go.
I don't know. My brother said Mick Bucket, and I'm kind of liking that.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Oh, boy.
Congratulations.
Always a pleasure, guys.
All right. Much more ahead in the next hour of our mornings powered by Up North News here on the Civic Media Radio Network. You said, what'd your brother say? What?
Mick Bucket.
Mick Bucket?
Yeah.
I get it.
Paint Mick Bucket.
Okay. Tony, you can't change Paint Bucket's name. He won't know who he is anymore.
That's true. It'll be an identity crisis.
Well, we don't even know if they're a he or a she. They right now they're a they.
Okay.
It's very hard to tell a pigeon gender.
I just think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small parts,
Yep.
Not a reason.
What was this? Oh, I remember when he was a young whippersnapper coming up. Okay. Oh, the flamingos. Okay.
Flamingos.
Yeah, they should have been pigeons, birds that really fly. All right.
Yes, I am not adopting a flamingo. No.
No.
I would adopt a flamingo.
All right.
I believe that of you, Parker.
Thank you. I will wear a flamingo shirt next time.
Okay. Awesome.
I have many.
Yay.
Love it. All right. Thank you, lady.
Okay.
Appreciate
Have
it
a
so
great
much.
day,
Yep.
guys.
See you later. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
How's Brittany today?
Pretty good. How are you?
Oh, good too. Good too.
Good.
We doing anything severe anywhere today?
I don't think there's a small chance, but
Okay.
probably just heavy rain.
Okay. Let's see. Is there anything out there right now? Oh yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
There's stuff there. It's just like you said in the forecast.
Yay!
Wow.
Who knew?
Good work out of you. All right. Good. All right. 20 seconds.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Hey, welcome back. It is 7 o'clock. Well, 7:06 anyway. We're in the 7 o'clock hour of our program these mornings, powered by Up North News. Nice to have you along. We've got Parker Olson in Madison Studio A2. Brittany Merlot will be up here in just a bit. And it's Wednesday, so we're going to be doing our homeroom segment coming up in our next half hour. We'll be talking to one school district finance director about the ongoing gap in special education reimbursement and how the legislature treats public schools compared to how it treats voucher schools. Spoiler alert, public schools, once again, coming out on the short end of the stick on that one. So stick around for that in just a bit. But first, we've got to talk about the weather, where an hour ago I read you the state forecast from meteorologist Brittany Merlot, and it said expect rain at the start of the day in the southeastern half of Wisconsin. And I'm calling up the radar right now, and it shows that much of the southeastern half of Wisconsin is getting rain this morning. So 1 point for Hufflepuff. Brittany Merlot gets that one right. It's raining in much of southeastern Wisconsin today. Ms. Merlot, good morning. How are you?
It sure is. Good morning, everyone. A little bit cooler today than what we felt yesterday. We hit 90 degrees down south, Kenosha,
Really?
Racine. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Scorching out there already. Mid 80s in Madison, and now today highs are going to be mostly in the 70s, low 70s to upper 70s, depending where you are. Right now, though, this morning, 50 degrees up north, 70 down south. We're seeing patchy fog far north as well. And then, of course, the overcast, cloudy skies, that rain rolling in southeast parts of the state. We're actually looking at a small storm headed towards Delavan and towards Lake Geneva area. Nothing is severe warned. There is a small chance that later this afternoon, some of these could become stronger, maybe severe. If they are severe, hail and high winds would be the risks with them. Otherwise, really just looking at some heavy downpours, especially south and especially east. Yes, Milwaukee area down to about Lake Geneva, even into Janesville. You could see 1 to possibly 2 inches of total rainfall today. So a bit of a soaker for you. No sunshine, unfortunately. Keep an eye out for, of course, some flash flooding. Streams are going to be rising down there as well. And then up north, what's going to be happening is not much. Maybe a scattered shower, maybe a rumble of thunder on occasion, much more likely as we go into the afternoon and evening. And again, none of those really look strong to severe. But as we go through tomorrow, those temperatures are going to be starting to rise again. We've got the potential for strong to severe storms tomorrow evening, then again on Friday, and then that heat and humidity is going to be building. And Pat, heat index, it's going to be feeling like 100 degrees as we go into Saturday and Sunday statewide.
Steamy, sultry, sticky, sauna-like out there. All right,
Yes.
well, we consider ourselves prepared here, and you know what you need to do when it gets to be like that? You need to drink your water. You know who knows this? Robin Tigerton. He says it's cloudy and 65. Yesterday, he had to mow 6 yards in Tigerton, trying to get ahead in the mowing game before the hot weather comes this weekend. He says, I do drink plenty of water and Gatorade. When I'm mowing, I still hear Greg in my head, drink your water. So Greg has a way of getting in your head that way about drinking your water. He mentions his cousin Jody Griepentrog passing away recently, who was an awesome cook at Matthew's Supper Club in Clintonville and made spaghetti for his birthday. And he goes on to say, Brittany is a meteorologist genius.
Thank you.
We can fact check that. That's 100% true. And Tony giving us a gross emoji face for the gross weather that might be coming up this weekend. But, again, Gatorade, water, all those things that Parker likes, not coffee.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Yes, no sugary drinks. And I know it's sad to say, but avoid the alcohol this weekend. It's going to dehydrate you.
All things in moderation, right, Brittany?
Yes, I know. Moderation, absolutely.
Yes. It's only Wednesday. I'm getting ahead of myself, but when you know that there's going to be such a hot weekend coming, do you have your own plans, your own defense mechanisms, or do you just stay inside in the air conditioning?
I try to hydrate right now. Actually, I went out to the store yesterday and I got those electrolyte packed crazy drinks where it's,
it's what plants
double
crave.
hydration.
Yes. Get your
Yeah.
Brondo. Okay.
I'll be drinking some of those. And then, of course, trying to stay cool as we go through this weekend. I'm not going to go crazy doing a lot of biking and stuff that I usually do because that heat exhaustion, it snuck up on me before. I have been close to heat stroke.
Yes.
So personally, I know.
Yeah, you don't want to be working that hard. And apparently the Gatorade H2O thing was a Waterboy reference, according to Tony.
Yes.
I guess I'll have to watch that movie sometime. So Waterboy hasn't made the cut yet, but maybe someday.
That's a good one.
Okay. Thank you, Brittany. Talk to you next
Thank you.
hour. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Coming up today on Matt and Air on Air, 9:30 this morning, Dr. Kristen Lyerly will be joining Jane and Greg. And then, of course, at 10:50, stick around for This Shouldn't Be a Thing. On the Maggie Dawn Show at 4:30 this afternoon, Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway will be joining Maggie Dawn. And, of course, you can catch Nightlight with Pete Schwaba at 6. And then there's always that Todd Alba Show. You will hear him weekdays from 2 to 4. And you often hear him at 7:50 on Wednesdays here. We've actually punted him. We've punted him over to Thursdays at 7:50. We're going to have Jimmy Koska on at 7:50 today for stations that are following us. You might be in a local news break. If that's the case, you can catch us later on demand by podcast. Head over to Spotify or Apple. Tony asks on YouTube, what? Tony, you need to know I am the worst at keeping up with some movies. You have no idea how many years and years it took me to watch Forrest Gump or Step Brothers or The Sandlot, all these movies that eventually my daughters would shame me into watching so I would get some of the movie references. So apparently Waterboy is going to have to go on that one. Let's talk a little sports at 7:13. First off, the NHL Stanley Cup. It's done. Florida won it. Yay. In baseball, the Cubs beat the Brewers 5-3. So the Cubs are now 6.5 games up on the second place Brewers. Isaac Collins did have a 2-run homer for Milwaukee. And Jake Mazeroski will make his second major league pitching start for the Brewers coming up tonight against the Cubs. Coverage of the pregame begins at 6:30 on stations in Richland Center, Oshkosh, Racine, Kenosha, Park Falls, and Hayward. So tune in there. And I believe... I was looking at the WIAA postseason calendar here, and we are a day away yet from the baseball and girls soccer championships. The baseball championships for high school will be at the Fox City Stadium in Grand Chute, and the girls soccer championships will be played in Milwaukee. So there's a little check on sports for you. Well, we got rid of the terrorists, right? All this deportation that's going on out there. We've gotten rid of all the terrorists. I guess because we're also at the point where a teacher's aide in the Milwaukee area has done that self-deportation thing. Because again, it's teachers' aides, the people who are helping our children, that are apparently the big risk. To crime, to our health, to the life of the country. I don't know, but. Once again, we've got Trump's mass deportation plan that is leading people to, basically fear for their livelihoods, and now are leaving the country with their American-born children. In this case, in Milwaukee, we're talking about teacher's aide Yesenia Rano and her 10-year-old daughters. It will be the first flight ever for her twins to a country they've never seen before. They were born in Milwaukee. They are U.S. citizens. And for Ruana, who works in the Milwaukee Public Schools, it's the end of a rich life built over 14 years in Wisconsin, according to an article written by Sophie Carson in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. She says, I have a tornado inside of her, standing with friends, colleagues, supporters. Said she was grateful for the support and hoped that she could one day return to the U.S. She crossed the border without authorization in 2011. She'd been living with an order for deportation, but until now there'd not been any effort to take action against her or others like her. She kept regular appointments with immigrations and customs enforcement. But she's now a local symbol of the Trump administration's deportation net, sweeping up people like her who have committed no crimes, have U.S. citizen children, and have been working legally in in-demand fields. And that's where I want to take it next year, because we also have seen Trump flip-flop on workplace raids depending on where they are. Last week he said he was going to leave alone farms and the hospitality services, but then days later reversed himself yet again and said there must be these mass deportations. And I think back to the Republican National Convention last year, in what is one of the lowest points in this country's history, was to see thousands of people in that arena holding up signs that said mass deportations now. It was one of the saddest moments in American history that in a country built by immigrants, many of whom did not follow any kind of processes like we have now, they simply came for that better life and made that better life. And they put up with all of the prejudice, discrimination, bias, abuse, bad publicity year after year. And to see it culminate this way in this manner is just such a sad low point, not just for American history, but for the American economy. I saw a great little spoof on social media yesterday featuring 4 or 5 older white guys wearing their Trump caps but shirtless, because they were out picking crops in a field for a few minutes. And then they said, this is tough. We got to bring them back. And then you see them trying to clean, a hotel room, and they can't. They're tired. And like, we got to bring them back. All these people waving these mass deportation signs whose lives would be so much poorer, but for the clothes that they wear that are made by migrants, for the services that they enjoy that were made by migrants. And they can all day long come back and go, well, she knew she was breaking the rules. We also know she broke the rules of a system that's broken, and she would like to follow the rules of a system that works. And the system would work if a certain class of politicians would get off their collective butts and once again embrace the notion that we need immigrants more than ever in this country, or this economy is going to go south in a hurry. The baby boomers and their red caps, they are leaving this mortal coil at a rapid rate, and they are not being replaced in the workforce. And to say, well, they just didn't follow the rules while you don't want to update the rules says a lot more about what your real motivations are. Those folks waving those mass deportation signs one day and pretending to go to church the next day. We need solutions in this country. We don't need mass deportations. It's expensive. It's wasteful of our tax dollars. And it's not targeting the people that are being vilified the most, the ones who aren't citizens but are committing crimes, which is a fraction, a tiny fraction of the immigrant population. But they're easy to villainize. They're easy to vilify, put in political ads with their dark skin and their long rap sheets, compared to all the many, many, many people who come here, make a better life for themselves, escape gang violence, escape human trafficking, until a bunch of white guys come along with their mass deportation signs and policies and say, this country's for Americans, said these people who weren't Native Americans in any way, shape, or form. So they're getting what they want. A good teacher's aide is self-deporting with her American daughters, and we can only hope she eventually makes her way back to this country to do good. Unlike some other people who we'd be all better off if they could somehow be deported right out of any seats of power in our government. Some of you are getting a local update next, and then we'll have our homeroom segment talking about special education funding in about 15 minutes. You're up north. It is just about 7:23 now on this Wednesday morning, June 18th. Pat Kreitlow up here in Chippewa Falls and Parker Olson at Studio A2 in Madison. Again, we say A2 because from now on, when guests come in here and they start heading toward A1, Parker's going to run out and tackle them and drag them down the hallway into A2. And let's get a window in that thing. What do you say? Here's the thing. You don't have to ask for permission to put that window in there. You just grab that sledgehammer that I know is down there with all the other building supplies, and you just put one hole in the wall, and they're like, well, now we got to do something. We may as well put a window in here. That's the back wall or the front wall up there, you know?
There's definitely stuff in this room that's heavy enough that I could use as a sledgehammer. I really want. There is a window, however, it does not look anywhere near towards like the entrance.
Yeah.
So I might have to go through an office or two to be able to see that way, but I think that'd be okay.
It's a work in progress. It's okay. From the Eau Claire Leader Telegram, Altoona's new container park aims for a mid-July opening. Let's see. This is talking about how I'm looking at the photo here. Have you seen these where people take these shipping containers, you know, that you might see in semis or on cargo ships and then repurpose them? And this one is like a little community park that will eventually be filled with like vendors and things like that. This particular space, it says, will include 5 total vendors, 3 restaurants, a tap room, and 1 retail space.
Wow.
I know. I'm like, I've seen this again for people who are looking for unique forms of housing. Have you seen where they're like put in a frame of like apartment buildings, maybe like a stack of 4x4, you know, on top of each other?
Okay.
I haven't watched any of like the HG TV shows or anything like that to know if this is really worthwhile. But I mean, it sounds like it has potential. Maybe.
Seems cool.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is I'm looking at the photo here, and it's down near the Altoona rail yard.
Okay.
Which my dad worked for the Chicago Northwestern Railroad for many years, working the train, worked in the caboose of the trains from Altoona to St. Paul. And at that Altoona rail yard, still as busy as ever, though the railroads don't have the same kind of employment that they used to have. But it's nice to again have development that is kind of embracing, the train tracks. You think of the ballparks, that are built along, like the St. Paul Saints, used to have one that was built along the train tracks there. Sure. So whether it's train tracks, rivers, things like that, it is not having it was just so tiring when every park and every housing development looked the same.
There is I think there are new apartments in Whitewater that a buddy of mine and I were driving past. And he looked at them and went, wait a minute, are we in Monona right now? What just happened?
Right?
Because it's the same thing.
Yes. And look, there's a lot to be said about consistency. I mean, part of the reason we have chains now is that there's consistency. If you go to a McDonald's or a Chili's or whatever, you know what you're going to get. I go to a Holiday Inn Express all the time. I know what I'm going to get. But you lose the local flavor that way. And I always tell the story about going to a business meeting when I worked in a different industry, and they sent me to a business meeting in Denver, but it turned out to be at an airport hotel. So all I could see out the window for this entire conference was, the Hilton and the Wyndham and the Hyatt and the Holiday Inn, and I saw a Chili's and a Wendy's and a McDonald's. There was nothing that told me I was in Denver until I went back to the airport, and you can see the mountains out the other way. But otherwise there was no local characteristic like that. Now, Altoona has started doing that. If you're taking Highway 53, which now bypasses Eau Claire to the east of Eau Claire, and you're going through Altoona, and once upon a time, there was nothing there. If I could find one old piece of footage of me as a TV reporter, which we'd be going back 25 years now, and it would be me standing in essentially the woods on a trail saying that someday the highway is going to come through here and all of this is going to be developed. And you're thinking, no way. And sure enough, it is. The River Prairie development it's lovely. Although I would argue it's really filling in, like it's filled in so much now that I feel like it might be losing some of its luster. But again, you can make it uniquely yours. And so now you come to the other part of Altoona and you see these containers that are they're painted in very bright colors, bright yellow, blue, orange, red, are all there. And again, show real promise for being, uniquely local, right there near the rail lines. And so I want to salute that and say, great, bring in the vendors. We need the local vendors. We need local restaurants. Again, there's nothing wrong with a little consistency, but it's definitely a short trip to Cookie Cutterville, isn't it?
Yeah, I would definitely rather eat at a locally owned, like, this is us embracing local community kind of place than I would go to McDonald's. As
Yeah.
much as I love a McNugget.
What I have fun with as I've done all my travels now is that if there's one thing McDonald's are known for in this day and age is that all the old men in a local community will gather at the McDonald's for their senior cup of coffee. And basically it'll be a gathering of the Knights of the Round Table there. The whole brain trust will gather and they will solve the problems of the world, man. And but the thing that's fun about that is if you go to a place, either a city or a community where there's not a local McDonald's, and can you find the place where they gather? And when you find that place, you're just like, oh, here's, if McDonald's were here, they'd be like, yep, here's where they put the McDonald's, if you ever do someday, because this too is where the brain trust gathers and solves all the problems of the world. If only we would listen to them. That's what we need in Washington, D.C. is we need microphones that are secretly wiretapping all those McDonald's early in the morning.
We should do that for just like a week. Just see what happens if we let the old guys at the round table do it.
I think that could be really fun. We're going to talk to Mark Elworthy from the Eau Claire Area School District about special education funding as part of our homeroom segment. That's coming up next. You're Up North. All right, and there is Mark now. Mark, good morning.
Morning. The camera likes me better.
There.
I do remember seeing Pat in the woods in Altoona at some point in time, 25 years ago. So.
I don't doubt it. So, how are you?
Yeah, there's how should I put it? Just think if the bypass would have gone through Augusta, that was one of the options.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I remember the bypass debate. I'm also old enough to remember the North Crossing debate on where that should go. So it's interesting to see all these things, eventually come into play. Mark, you're the finance director for the school district, right?
Oh, sorry about that. Just wanted to get some pillows away.
Oh, no.
There you go.
That's all right.
Yep.
Finance director, right?
Executive Director of Business Services. Yep.
Executive Director of Business Services. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me get that. I want to get that right in the notes here. Scroll down a bit here. There we go. Executive Director of Business Services. All right. Okay. And so we're going to get into the special education funding disparity. What are you seeing out of the budget debate so far?
Well, believe it or not, I was in Madison last night. It's pretty quiet. Everybody, they're both in session today.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, I think what's interesting is how quiet it's been. It's kind of like it was like this 2 years ago. So, if optimistic side of me says they must be talking right now. So
it does.
Hopefully they're back at it. Yeah.
Yep. Hopefully. So, we'll get at what would be best case scenario coming out of this. Maybe not realistic, but best case scenario to come out.
Right.
Of it. And what other areas of this would you want to make sure we touch on here this morning?
I think the news out of Madison last week was the fact that there wasn't going to be any state aid. And what's really important is the revenue limits based on balancing. It's in place to limit property taxes, the increase of property taxes. So the absence of state aid, general state aid, that means the $325 dollar increase on the revenue limit will be projected to be fully, as written right now, is fully funded by local property taxes.
Okay.
So that's significant.
Okay.
That was probably the biggest news out of Madison after joint finance voted.
Okay. Good.
And-
Good. Anything else on there?
I mean, I think the big part, whether it's special ed funding, what Eau Claire's really believes is that, if our neighbors are doing well, we're doing well. And I think the big parts, I think for many years, whether due to finances and everything, we've just kind of nibbled at the edges of school funding to the point of 20 years ago, we used to be 8th in the nation. Now, according to the Census Bureau, we're about 26. So, we have not been investing in education, and understandably so. There are other components of the budget that have to be addressed. But I think it's really important. What's the biggest impact is if you look at the big buckets like state aid or the special education aid. Those things impact every school district. And so, you hear about high cost special education aid, and it sounds good, but if special ed was fully funded, at one point in time, it was the legislature in state law was 70% reimbursement.
Right.
Now we're at just under 31%.
Yeah.
So, that's significant. And if we're mandated to do it, and as a result, if to fund those, we take it out of our general fund dollars. So
Exactly. All right.
yeah.
Well, good. We'll keep that in mind, and we will get going here in 30 seconds. I'm going to tuck you back
Okay.
in the waiting room for just the very beginning of the segment.
Yeah.
I'll see you in just a bit. Tomorrow on the program, Todd Alba, Chad Holmes, Sean O'Malley talking about your money in the markets, and Joe Zepecki all joining us on our mornings powered by Up North News here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Baseball tonight, Cubs, Brewers, 6:30 on stations in Richland Center, Oshkosh, Racine, Kenosha, Park Falls, and Hayward. Head over to civicmedia.us to learn more. And over at Up North News, we are now a 7-day-a-week newsletter source, including our Monday through Friday with plenty of features and news about Wisconsin, Saturday with a focus on sports, Sunday mornings, my newsletter with a focus on politics. Head over to upnorthnewswi.com, click subscribe at the banner at the top of the homepage, and pick 1, 2, or all 3 of those newsletters to get the update from the entire Up North News team. All right, let's get to our homeroom segment for this week, and we're going to get a bit into the weeds on the state budget. Because again, when people go, oh, my eyes are going to glaze over, I'm going to fall asleep. No, don't. These are your state tax dollars, and you should have a better idea of where they're going. Frankly, I think that if more people knew where their tax dollars were going, where they think they're going versus where they actually are going, they might make some different choices for, their legislators in November. So we're going to get into a particular aspect of it when it comes to education funding. And joining us to do that is Mark Elworthy. He's the Executive Director of Business Services for the Eau Claire Area School District. Mark, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you here because, you have obviously been following this state budget debate very closely. We understand the stakes that are involved from a general standpoint, but we also know that if you just focused on the big buckets of money that go to schools, you're kind of losing sight of how some of the smaller buckets do have an impact on our property tax bills. And specifically, we're talking about special education funding. The Joint Finance Committee, which is made up of senators and state assembly reps and essentially writes their version of the state budget bill. The governor has his version and then they write their version. And the parts that they were working on recently dealing with education and special education were a little concerning, especially because of the gap between the way that special education gets state help in public schools versus the voucher program, which goes to private, usually religious schools. So, Mark, with all that as a setup, what are you seeing right now from the legislature's Joint Finance Committee that maybe concerns you about how special education funding is done by this legislature?
Right. So, broadly speaking, in Wisconsin, the funding formula, and I know people think it's complex. If we boil it down to a couple things, it's revenue limits minus state aid equals property taxes. And general aids, which was one of the most noticeable differences between the Joint Finance Committee and the governor's proposed budget, is there's no money going into general aids. And so that impacts all aspects of education. Why? Because instead of the state contributing to funding of education in the next 2 years, it would solely, any increases would be solely funded as currently written by local property taxes. The revenue limits came into place in 1993 when local property taxes were ironically going up too quick. In this current proposed budget by Joint Finance Committee, it returns the funding solely to the increases solely to local property taxes. Then you've got special education aid, and it's been a hot topic. Some proposals about increasing high-cost special education in comparison to categorical aid special education or special education categorical aid. What's really important to know is special education categorical aid is received by every district in the state. High cost, and it's for students that require, and we are mandated to educate all students that attend public schools a certain amount above 30% minus some aids. That only impacts about 50% of the districts. I've heard as few as 1,000 students. So the proposal coming out was to improve the high cost special education aid, but what should be noted is that only impacts a very basically half the district, and a very small part. It's about 1/100th of the actual categorical aids. So in the budget process, it's about give and take most years, and it's, I think, really important. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to be here to educate that special education categorical aid, state categorical aid go to all districts, and that really moves the needle. Right now in Wisconsin, we're about 28th in the nation. 20 years ago, we used to be funding our schools we were ranked 8th. So that's a significant difference. And so why are we in this place? It's because funding has either been frozen or just addressed in very small amounts over the last 20 years.
And this is a rhetorical trick that I've seen a lot and really wanted to call out, because again, you've got that big bucket of money of categorical aids. You've got the slightly smaller bucket of special education categorical aids, and then you've got the even smaller bucket of high cost special education aid that you were just describing. And the tactic is that you get, in this case, a certain group of legislators saying, hey, look at how much we've put into this small bucket over here. But as you just pointed out, that bucket is so specialized that only about 50% of school districts even need to tap into that bucket, when what would really help would be, either in the larger bucket of special education categorical aid or just general state aid overall. But for one reason or another, you've got people saying, well, we're at least putting a lot into this much smaller bucket, so that ain't nothing. But it's not nearly what it could be, Mark.
Yeah, it's not surprising. That has been the decision-making voting pattern of the recent past, right? And again, why are we here? It's because we've underfunded, whether it's schools in general or specifically special education categorical aid. If we fully funded special education categorical aid, there would be no need for high-cost special education aid.
That's a magnificent point. That if you just fixed, the small bucket of special education, you wouldn't even need the even smaller budget of high cost special education if again, you would just do your job. But there's also that funding gap of special education overall between public schools and the voucher program for private, usually religious schools. And that's the one that I think the members of Joint Finance heard about from the public more than anything else. And it's the one that blew me away when I first learned about it a couple of years ago, that voucher schools are being reimbursed by the state for special education costs at about 90%. And public education, which used to be way up there, 67 to 70% or something, it was apparently, to hear Republican legislators 2 years ago tell it, a big deal that they increased the reimbursement rate in public schools to now, is it 32%, something like that?
It's targeted for 33.3%.
Oh, okay.
DPI just came out with their annual calculations. It's just under 31, because the costs to educate do not keep up. The funding's always been some certain, so it's a fixed amount, and it's a budget, right? And costs increase over the biennial budget, and so it's traditionally lower than the targeted amount. But yeah, and I think you're right. The concept of addressing high cost special education, how should I put it, got attached to the vouchers and special ed. I think it probably, how should I suggest that, the benefits of making this adjustment aren't significant enough. Again, the special education categorical aid would make the difference, but again, it became a dialogue. People reached out, and so it was written in and approved by the Joint Finance.
We are talking to Mark Elworthy, who is the Executive Director of Business Services for the Eau Claire Area School District, and specifically about special education funding and some of the disparities that are involved in it. For folks who would say, Mark, well, why are we even talking about state reimbursement of special education funding? The whole reason it was set up in the first place deals with the fact that special education costs, it costs a lot more to provide education to children with those special needs. And so initially the state wanted to help out with that higher cost. As that percentage has come down over time, correct me if I'm wrong, but those higher costs to take care of kids needing special education, that just then goes into the general budget, and that costs all property taxpayers rather than having the state reimburse a share of it.
Yeah, exactly. So in Eau Claire, we are projected to have to use our general fund dollars. $23.2 million is going to be used, or projected to be used. We're just wrapping up our budget right now to pay for special ed, which is mandated. Correct. And that's a direct result of underfunding of special education categorical aid.
Yeah, our friend Chris Hambuck-Boyle puts up on Facebook, private schools are guaranteed the amount given in the budget. Public schools are not, a point that you were making earlier as well. So here's the thing, and I know I've been banging this drum a lot. I'm going to bang it again anyway. 15 years ago, we were dealing with the start of the Great Recession and a budget shortfall of $3 to $6 billion, a shortfall of $3 to $6 billion. And we currently have a budget surplus of $4 billion. Nobody's saying give the whole $4 billion to me, even though a lot of people would like that. But for a part of that $4 billion, Mark, what could we do to make things better for the taxpayers of Eau Claire and other school districts if we somehow use some of that surplus as a way to reimburse special education costs?
Well, because the funding hasn't occurred, Eau Claire, like many school districts, has had to go back to the public for referendums, right? So increased funding will decrease the likelihood of a district needing to go to referendum. Now that's, assuming that the investment is significant. Otherwise, we're just going to be playing on the edges. We'll live year to year or every 2 years, or based on a referendum. Ours is 4 years long. We'll be right back there, but it's also sustainable. The other thing in Eau Claire is we've been frozen. We're a low revenue ceiling limit school district, and that was a conversation that was happening at the Capitol during budget negotiations. In the current budget, It was the first time in a significant increase of $800 on the revenue limit that benefited Eau Claire. And why is that significant? Because when revenue limits started in 1993, Eau Claire was in its own economic recession. One of the largest employers was about to shutter. And so the school board purposely levied at a lower rate because that's what the community could afford. We've been frozen in time. We've had an adjustment, but that's another type of state aid that would allow us flexibility and just allow us, it funds education in a more significant and longitudinal manner.
And I want to end on that note that Eau Claire had kept that level low in the early 90s because the Uniroyal tire plant was closing up. And so it was to protect property taxpayers. But Eau Claire has been penalized ever since, being frozen in for a school funding system that is grossly outdated and in need of repair. With ideas coming our way this morning from Mark Elworthy of the Eau Claire School District. Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate your expertise. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank
All
you.
right.
Have a great day, too.
When we come back together in our next hour, we will be talking to Earl Ingram and Melissa Baldoff. I'm Pat Kreitlow. You're up north. All right, we are in commercial and we are good to go. Mark, that was spectacular. Thank you so much for the explanation.
Oh, thank you. And please know, and I appreciate Mike Johnson and the school district gives me a thumb up. So anytime, I'm more than happy to be a resource. And I don't know if Chris told you, I did work at DPI for 3 years before coming back to Eau Claire. So my team is part of that my former team is part of that calculation component. So.
That is awesome. All right. Sounds great.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk
Take
again
care.
soon.
Have a
All
good
right.
one.
See ya.
You bet.
How's Jimmy doing today?
Doing all right. Yesterday was our 5:30 in the morning football practice, so this is like sleeping in for me.
Yikes.
That was a good segment. I'm on a school board, so,
Yeah.
all this state aid stuff is speaking my language.
Oh, without a doubt, and again, like you said, there's just, you can nibble at the edges all day long, but you're nibbling at the edges of an outdated system.
Yeah, absolutely. It sucks for being a small rural district with declining enrollment right now, because every year it's like, well, what teachers do we not hire? What are we not offering? And the answer usually is, things like, advanced credits, things like that, and extracurriculars at some point. So
Yeah, right.
Prairie du Chine's a great example. So
Okay. Do you have any stories you've been working on the past couple of days we can talk about?
I did send you a short list of stuff I've had on the last 3 days.
Oh, look what you've done. You've sent me a list right here.
Yeah,
There
the
we go.
Derek Van Orden stuff I have not put in newscast, but I'm aware of it. If that's the route you want to go, I just don't like talking about politics. So
No, don't worry about that. Let's see.
he just keeps talking trash, and I try not to run it unless it's like he's actually affecting policy decision, which he hasn't. I don't think he's had a single bill passed, but
He has not. No.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
No, I appreciate the info here. So let me get that.
There's also some dairy breakfasts. The Buffalo County one's the closest to my coverage area in La Crosse, but most of the areas here are done with dairy breakfast. So
Yeah. Okay. Good. We got 60 seconds until we come back. So I'm just going to read through these notes, and I'll be back your way in just a bit.
sounds good.
Hey, let's get an update now on some Western Wisconsin stories that Jimmy Kuska and others at Civic Media are working on. Jimmy, how are you today?
I am fantastic. Great to be back this week with you.
What you seem so refreshed. Did you sleep in this morning? Did you get a little extra shut eye?
Oh, I certainly did. So in the summer, with the new WIAA rules on contact days, we're allowed to have additional workouts, voluntary, of course, in high school sports, and I'm a high school football coach. So on Tuesdays, we are holding 5:30 in the morning conditioning practices. So yesterday, I was up 5 o'clock setting up cones on a very wet football field with like 3-inch tall grass. So today, I got to sleep in a little bit and actually. I had to listen to most of your show this morning, but it feels good not to go at 5 in the morning.
I got to sleep in to listen to an early morning radio show. That is really saying something. And not just a coach, but also a school board member. So I'm sure our discussion in our last segment was not alien to you one bit in terms of the difficulties every school district faces in putting together their budgets.
Yeah, and the difference, in the last segment we're talking about Eau Claire, a school district that I know pretty well because I lived in Eau Claire for a long time. I'm a school board member at a small rural district in Wisconsin where, as of a couple of years ago, the data showed 70% of rural districts in Wisconsin had declining enrollment. So that's presenting additional challenges to the school funding mess that we're in. It's forced a lot of schools to go to referendum, as I think you've probably discussed a million times on your show. It is a real challenge as the budgets that were set this year in our area. A lot of schools used to have some leeway or put some money away in fund balance for future capital projects. They can't do that now. We're going with like a zero mistake budget for next year, where if a boiler goes out, if there's a $100,000 repair, there's no cushion in the budget for stuff like that, just to maintain services and staffing for the students. Because ultimately, what are schools here? They're here to serve the kids, right? And that's the route we went in our district. But it is a fascinating discussion, and unfortunately, the current budget process is showing that it's not really a priority right now, but for the legislature as it is. But certainly, it is a very complicated issue, and I really appreciate you having guests on like the one you just had on talking about it, because it's a lot to wrap your head around, and it's good to have someone that knows the ins and outs of it.
Pat, you muted yourself.
I did, didn't I? Sorry, I was slurping some coffee earlier here. I apologize. The point that I was making is that's why we need good people serving in local government, either as elected officials on these boards or serving like as a finance director, to really learn the numbers and not just grouse about the system, but actually try to be part of the solution. Another example where you see that is at the local government level, not just for schools, but cities, for counties. You're telling me in La Crosse, you've got a note that the roof is leaking at the La Crosse Center and needs repairs. And so the board there had to decide last night whether to allocate funding for that. We all love talking about these shiny new buildings going up, schools and civic centers and things like that, but you still got to do the maintenance.
Yeah, and you still have to do all the planning. You still have to do all the zoning. I mean, there's a lot that goes into any kind of school project, right? Well, the La Crosse Center Board, I mean, they had to know $60,000 around just to fix a leak in the roof, but that takes multiple levels of approval to get done. La Crosse also had to approve rezoning a couple of areas so that the school district, which had a referendum approved last year to consolidate its elementary schools, well, they just got the last stage of approvals from the city and the Common Council to actually go ahead and do that, building a new elementary school at the Hogan administrative site, and then adding on at another location, but also closing a couple of elementary schools. So when you talk about school issues and funding issues, there's really two parts of it. One, there's the funding formula is way outdated and the infrastructure is really aging, but also with declining enrollment pretty much across the board, whether you're urban, suburban, or rural, it's forcing school districts to close buildings, and pretty much across the board in the state, you're seeing school closures and properties go up for sale. And La Crosse just went through some very contentious referendums to get to this point where they're able to start moving the elementary schools together a little bit because some of the buildings were sitting half empty.
Wow. We're talking to Jimmy Kuska here about some Western Wisconsin stories. And speaking of infrastructure and replacement costs, in Trempealeau, the DNR is investigating a bridge that was burned, and Assembly Representative Steve Doyle has had some things to say about what it's going to take to fix up the Tank Creek Bridge.
Yeah, and this bridge on May 15th was apparently set on fire. The DNR is trying to learn more about it, but Steve Doyle posted on social media that now that they've dug into it a little bit, the cost to replace this bridge would be multiple millions of dollars. And this is a bridge that connects a 24-mile trail along the river. So it's a very frequently used trail, and there's no detour for it because you're going through, as you know, in western Wisconsin, there's a lot of rivers, there's a lot of wetland, a lot of marshland. This is, for people that like recreation, and I'm sure if you live in the Driftless, this is, this is what you live here for. It's a really, really important thing. When you talk about, bridges and road repairs and stuff, you're not necessarily always talking about what we drive vehicles across, but to have something safe for people to go across in some of these areas that are geographically challenging, multiple millions of dollars to replace this bridge that, again, the DNR is actively putting out press releases asking, can you help us find out who did this? Because the fire that happened to the bridge actually moved some of the supports, melted some of the supports, and now the cost to replace it could be exceedingly high.
Yeah. Jimmy Kuska gives us updates on what's happening in the west central Wisconsin area. That would include dairy breakfast. You list out here some in Hayward, Grantsburg, Thorpe, Elroy, Cochrane. You going to one of them this weekend?
So I've already made my rounds because we had all of ours kind of in the last 2 weeks. So I got to go to Grant counties, Richland counties, Crawford counties. But I tell you what, dairy breakfasts are one of my absolute favorite things about living in Wisconsin. There's nothing better getting up in the morning and grabbing yourself a big old stack of pancakes and some cheese curds.
They are the best. Jimmy Kuska, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right. And James Kelly will be here from our Chippewa Falls newsroom to tell us about stories he's covering in Northwest Wisconsin. But on the way in our 8 o'clock hour, Earl Ingram's going to be here. We'll talk a bit about the history and preview Milwaukee's Juneteenth celebration. Also, Melissa Baldoff and the updated forecast from Brittany Merlot. I'm Pat Kreitlow. You're up north. And there we are. Break. Thank you, Jimmy.
Hey, thank you. I hope I did okay with that. That's a little different for me. So
I absolutely loved it. Thank you for doing that, and I'll look forward to doing it again next Wednesday, and we'll do a little sports on the Monday.
Appreciate it, Ben. Take care.
All right, have a great day. See ya.
Pat, were you getting echo during that?
A little bit. I think I don't know if Jimmy was using his computer speaker or I thought he had headphones on, but he was getting bleed through somewhere on there. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I could not figure that out.
Feel free to send him a note and ask if he was using a speaker or something that he can turn down.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Let's make sure Earl's connection is good. Hi, Earl. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. So I stole the Juneteenth one just because I saw you're going to be on Todd's show later today talking about Juneteenth. So
absolutely,
I assumed you're okay if we talk about that.
Absolutely.
Was there anything else on your to-do list for today for me?
Yeah. Well, I guess we could talk a little bit about the fact that the city of Milwaukee skyline is listed as one of the top 17 in the world by Architectural Digest.
Oh, okay.
And people may be surprised, but Milwaukee is the downtown skyline is transformed, and it's absolutely beautiful. People have no idea, no concept of what has happened. Many people still look at Milwaukee as the Laverne and Shirley, but it's certainly long since paced that. The other thing is there's the largest wood lumber building in the world that is right now going up in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I just saw some kind of a headline about that, and I was really wanted to learn more.
Timber. It's a timber building. Actually.
A timber building. That's crazy. Wow. So we want to learn more about that too. All right, that sounds great. So that's good for a start. So I'll tuck you back in for the rest of the newscast and see you after the weather.
Real quick,
right.
Earl, is there a TV or something that's on in the background?
Yes. You want to turn it down?
Yeah, could you turn that down, please?
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
Earl.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Hey, good morning. It is 8:06. Nice to have you here up north on this Wednesday, June 18th. I'm up here in Chippewa Falls. Parker Olson is in Madison Studio A2. We will be joined shortly by Earl Ingram, and then later Melissa Baldoff. James Kelly will give us an update from our Chippewa Falls newsroom as well. But first, here's meteorologist Brittany Merlot to tell us that there's some rain going on out there. And then there's going to be some more rain. And then there's going to be some heat, some high heat.
You really simplify it, Pat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's basically what's going to happen.
It's wet and then it's hot. Thankfully, I don't have to give you the specifics. Brittany tracks all of those things. So here's where she says it's going to go.
Here we go. It's summer, right? Well, not officially yet. Meteorologically, it is. But the first day of summer is just 2 days away, and we are definitely going to be feeling it. So here's what we've got going on this morning. It's upper 50s temperature-wise. Up north, we've got some sunshine. Lucky you. Down south, not the same. It is cloudy, overcast, low 70s, so a little bit warmer, and we've got some rain moving in. Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha, you're about to get some. Also, more is moving into western parts of the state. South, a lot of southern parts of the state are going to get hit with some soaking rain today. We could see some thunderstorms embedded in there too. And far southeast, you could see some potentially flash flooding events going on because you could get 1 inch to 2 inches of rainfall total throughout today. So areas down south, it's going to be a soaker. Up north, a little bit less of that. We will get cloudy and we will see chances for showers and storms, especially this afternoon and evening, but none of them are really looking strong or severe. So as we go through tomorrow, we are going to start to heat things up a little bit more. Upper 70s to the low 80s. Showers and storms are expected again in the afternoon, and then another round at night, which could be strong to severe. And then, of course, more on Friday as a warm front lifts through. Those have the potential to be strong to severe once again. And then we're going to be in the sauna. That's what I'm calling it, because dew points are going to be in the mid 70s, which is pretty oppressive. That is very muggy, hot, and humid conditions. Paired with temperatures in the 90s, our heat index is going to feel like 100 degrees on both Saturday and Sunday. So start hydrating right now.
So we've got grandkids coming to visit, the younger ones this weekend, 3 and 6 years old. And so at first we thought, well, okay, pontoon ride, that's going to be a must. But then we thought a little bit more about the forecast and decided that we got to head to the garage today. We got to dig out all those sprinkler toys. There's a lot of a little kid slip and slide, and of course all the little the little water guns and things like that. So if anybody's interested, Kreitlow Backyard, we'll have all the water toys out this weekend.
That is the best way to stay cool and have some smiles too. How adorable! I love it.
I know. You know, when you mentioned the first day of summer, it gives me that every season changes. I get this whole thing about the Earth, being on its axis the way that it is, and that's why you have. Like up at the North Pole, you're going to have 6 months of daylight, as opposed to 6 months in the wintertime of complete and total darkness. And it's still, I know this goes way beyond the weather, but why are we tilted the way that we are? It's 23.5 degrees, because I looked it up, because that's what nerds do. But why? Why is it tilted that much, which gives us seasons and all those other good things? But, there's speculation that maybe a long time ago, there was a collision somewhere, out there that knocked us off our axis a little bit. But
sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the kind of thing, as some other planet went, I'm just going to slide by you right there. Don't worry about me.
And they said, yep.
Yeah, they said, as they went by, of course. Yep. And so it's just that's just my every 3 month appreciation for having seasons, because trust me, there's a lot to be said for living in the Caribbean. And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of good stuff about it. But when you leave and then come back, you realize how much you missed actual seasons.
Oh, 100%.
I'm a big fan of that. So sometimes you look at things with new eyes. Thank you, Brittany. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
You're welcome. You too.
And there's my transition to looking at things with new eyes. And that would be bringing in Earl Ingram here to be talking about things that he covers in Milwaukee for Civic Media. There he is, the pride of Washington High School. Earl, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being here. When I say looking at things with new eyes, what I mean about Milwaukee is this. Sherry and I lived there from 1987 to 1991 while she was attending the medical college. And both our daughters were born at the old St. Luke's Hospital down there in Milwaukee. And as you know, with any major American city, it goes through its cycles. And the cycle in the late 80s, early 90s was not necessarily kind to Milwaukee. And I go back there now and look at it with a new set of eyes. And I fall in love with it all over again each time going down there at the improvements that are being made. Obviously, it is far from perfect. There's always work to be done. But the fact that there are people willing to do that work, and it leads us into one of the stories we wanted to share this morning, and that's the Milwaukee skyline, which back in 1987 was one building, the old U.S. Bank building, and whatever it's called now. That skyline looks a lot different after all these years, and there are folks around the country that have taken notice.
Well, actually, I'd say folks around the world.
Yeah.
Architectural Digest has rated Milwaukee skyline as one of the top 17 in the world. And that's an amazing accomplishment for the city of Milwaukee, considering it's in competition here in the United States. When you think about skylines, you think about New York City, Chicago, Seattle, and those types of cities. And then you also think globally, you think about, Hong Kong, Dubai, Tokyo, Shanghai, Toronto. Those are all spectacular skylines, and now Milwaukee is listed as one of those top 17. And so for people who live in this state who have not visited Milwaukee, they have no concept, no clue whatsoever about the beauty that is downtown Milwaukee and the skyline that continues to evolve.
Well, and again, it does so in a way that when you go, well, wait, it's one of those smaller cities. Well, yeah, what you don't have there is you don't have the clutter. You have the diversity of the designs, which means the diversity of the usage that's in there. And again, it really reflects improvements that have been made in the city over time. And I mean, those improvements are, continuing to this day. I mean, you've got something that's going up there. What's it going to be called? The largest ever timber constructed building, something like that.
It's called the Edison. It's mass timber, an engineered product created by combining layers of lumber into strong material touted for its environmental benefits and aesthetic appeal. Milwaukee had the largest building of that nature, and they held that for a few years. And then in, why am I blanking? Australia, okay. They eclipsed that tower that Milwaukee has had the honor of having the largest building, and we now turn around and we're eclipsing the one that they have in Australia. But beautiful, beautiful architecture, beautiful, beautiful building. And so again, if people who haven't been downtown Milwaukee, the aesthetics of it during the summer, we're about to kick off Summerfest on tomorrow. And if you haven't been to the Summerfest grounds and that lake that's been developed to some degree, spectacular.
The building itself, that, as Earl mentioned, is called the Edison, and it is going to be 32 stories tall, 378 apartment units there. And again, most of the materials will be coming from U.S. supplies, but not all of them by any stretch of the imagination. And I do recall seeing a story sometime back that, Donald Trump's tariffs are going to cause some issues with construction here, because again, we get a lot of timber, say from Canada, for example, one of our best allies, but Donald Trump is picking a fight with all of our allies here, and I can't even tell you for sure, Earl, if these tariffs on timber are going to affect the building of the Edison Tower. I don't know if they know, because with Trump, you get something one day and then you hear something else the other day, which, again, if you're building one of the largest ever, mass timber buildings, that's got to be a little perplexing.
Well, I'm pretty sure that it probably is, because I don't know if if that timber is produced here in this country. And so their plans for erecting this building had been in the makings for somewhere around 3 to 5 years, and now they broke ground just the other day, and so we'll see. But after it's all said and done, it's going to be another beautiful, beautiful addition to what is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful downtown Milwaukee.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was looking at. I did just find an article from Tom Dakin in the Journal Sentinel about the imported materials that are there, and some of those imported materials are not going to arrive until spring of next year, and so. Apparently, it's noted in the article here that creates a lot of uncertainty regarding how trade negotiations are going to ebb and flow over the next year or so here. But when all is said and done, because this mass timber type of construction is more environmentally sustainable, it is closer to carbon neutral, it's going to reduce construction costs. And again, it just comes back to the smart kind of construction that's going on in Milwaukee and some of these other cities, because I mean, Earl, anybody can slap something together, but when you actually put some thought into the process, you end up having a downtown that is much more, workable as a result, and where people actually still want to work and play. And the funny thing is, for all the grousing you hear from some of our suburban friends out there, they still need a place like Milwaukee to come work and play.
Well, absolutely, and that will be forthcoming in the next month or so with all the different festivals and all the different activities that take place in downtown Milwaukee.
Yeah, they sure will. Not the least of them being the Brewers taking on the Cubs. Now they're doing that at Wrigley right now, but that Central Division showdown, will be coming back here to Milwaukee before you know it. The Cardinals were just here in town last week. The Brewers, unfortunately, are on the losing end of yesterday's opener of that series with the Cubs. I believe the final score was 5-3 here. There was this 2-run home run by Isaac Collins at one point, and unfortunately, Chad Patrick, the starting pitcher, just couldn't hold back a fifth-inning rally, so the Cubs go on to win by a score of 5-3. The Cubs are now up in the division, 6.5 games over the second-place Brewers. They'll go back tonight to Wrigley Field and try to even out the series. The pregame will be starting at 6:30 on several civic media stations. Jacob Mizorowski will be pitching in his second ever major league game. And that's good news because, the kid had a no-hitter through 5 innings, but then was feeling some cramps and some soreness and left the game. I was fearing the worst, but apparently, things are okay, that he's getting set to get started against the Cubs here again tonight. So you can hear that on several civic media stations. A local update is coming up next for some of you. For those of you hanging here, we're going to continue our conversation with Earl Ingram. I think we'll get into a little Summerfest chatter coming up. And when we're all back together in our next half hour, we'll be talking to Melissa Baldoff. That's all here from the heart of America's Up North, live from Lake Wissota. Thanks for making this the place to spend part of your mornings. I'm Pat Kreitlow, and this is the Civic Media Radio Network. All righty. We got this 3-minute break here ahead of us now, Earl. You mentioned Summerfest. So I wanted to ask if it's something, have you been a regular attendee, or are there other festivals that, are near and dear to your heart when summer breaks out in Milwaukee?
Well, you're looking at a guy who was at the first Summerfest. And so you're talking about, I don't know, it might have been 1970s, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And the first Juneteenth day, which was in 1972. So, I remember the Summerfest grounds when it was just a bunch of gravel. And Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 at that time being, the big group. They had one stage. And so it's evolved to what it is now. So and many different festivals, many different things going on. Not the least bit Bastille Days, amongst others.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great. Yeah. We'll maybe end with that. We'll start with the Juneteenth stuff coming right out of the break, which is in 2 minutes. So I'll come get you at that mark. I'll see you in a bit.
All right.
We have got Civic Media reporter James Kelly coming up a half hour from now from our Chippewa Falls newsroom to tell us about the stories he's covering in that part of the state. Meanwhile, down in the southeastern part of the state, we've got Earl Ingram here, and we're going to be talking about the Juneteenth holiday, which is tomorrow, that an increasing number of communities and businesses are recognizing. So we wanted to find out how Milwaukee is marking Juneteenth. But Earl, obviously, because it's still a relatively new holiday for a chunk of the population, I think we need to explain once again the origins, the long ago origins of Juneteenth, which are frankly finally getting recognized, finally getting their due. But tell us what it's all about from the beginning.
Well, Juneteenth Day has been celebrated going back to the 1800s. But what really transpired is people didn't really understand 1776, the birth of our America's independence. And so people celebrated Independence Day for this nation, but that wasn't the case for slaves. And so people often say, well, why does there need to be a Juneteenth Day, an Independence Day? There's already an Independence Day. Well, it wasn't for all Americans. And so the ancestors of our ancestors didn't get that feeling. And it was back in Galveston, Texas, where the first time that people realized that, slavery had ended. And so, because of that, this history, which should be American history, right now, we've got a president that's doing away with all history, especially history that relates to people of color in this nation. The story and the history of Juneteenth Day and what transpired and the freedom and the importance of that needs to be taught in this nation so that history is never forgotten. So Juneteenth Day in the city of Milwaukee is, without question, one of the largest Juneteenth days in the entire country. And I have certainly celebrated it since its inception. Back in about 1972, I was 18 years old. And I remember the excitement with having this opportunity to bring all those people together. And I think it was probably in about a 10-block radius. And to see your community together and celebrating something as important as the end of slavery, the physical ending of slavery is what's worthwhile and something I'll never forget.
And it is worth noting when you talk about the current administration. I mean, this is marked because even though, the 13th Amendment had been ratified and even though the Civil War had, for all intents and purposes, ended, it wasn't until June 19th, 1865, that an Army Major General told the last group of slaves that they had been freed, or enslaved people, that they had been freed. They wouldn't have known about it. And that's definitely in keeping with a political class of people in this day and age that would do whatever they could to hold people back if they could. And it's why I think so many of us were happy that former President Joe Biden recognized it as a holiday. So you have this celebration that's going to be happening in Milwaukee tomorrow. A lot of places will have holidays tomorrow as well. And in many ways, it does get us rolling on the summer festival season in Milwaukee. And I was going to ask you about Summerfest. And of course, why would I not be surprised to hear you were at the first Summerfest back in 1970?
Well, Summerfest and the lakefront in 1970 was a far cry from what it is today. And it was, never will forget, it was gravel, muddy, and the Jackson Five, then Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five, were one of the first acts. And I remember him as a very young boy, and a group of us gathering together and enjoying that. But to see where it's come to now, it's an internationally recognized festival, and one of the best in the entire world that takes place every year. It kicks off tomorrow, June 19th. There's a new twist to it this year. Juneteenth Day, a part of it will be celebrated on the festival grounds. So it's an exciting time. In addition to the fact that there'll be 30 to 40,000 people gathered within a 10-block radius. If you can envision 30 to 40,000 people in a 10-block radius, that's what Juneteenth Day is. I'll be there the entire day on tomorrow and seeing people that you hadn't seen, in a long, long time.
It's a bit of a homecoming, I guess, is one way that you could put it. And look, there have been some festivals already. Polish Fest, for example, was last weekend. You've got we've got the Bloody Mary Festival is listed on here. There's the Harley Davidson Homecoming is on July 10th. There's Rainbow Summer July 14th. Bastille Days is on July 17th. I mean, on and on it goes. And I feel fortunate to have lived there at a time when Summerfest was, again, this was 30 years younger and was still very accessible. But if anybody's never been down there, Earl, you got to tell them to go. You got to tell folks get down there and attend this stuff. It's just too fun to miss.
Well, and it's really, if you look where Summerfest is situated, it's the most expensive plot of land in the city of Milwaukee and actually in the state of Wisconsin. And it's right there on Lake Michigan. We're not talking about a river walk. We're not talking about things that are built on rivers. It's built on a lake. A beautiful, beautiful lake, and that's what makes it so inspiring.
It's beautiful. It's the breeze is amazing, and can't recommend it enough. Earl, thanks as always for the visit. Have a wonderful day.
You as well.
All right, coming up next, we're going to talk to Melissa Baldoff. First, a reminder, sign up for our newsletters, plural, over at our homepage, upnorthnewswi.com. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. How's Melissa today?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
All right. Did you get to Polish Fest at all?
No, because we were at convention.
Oh, that's right. It went all the way through Sunday. See, I still very much have a Friday, Saturday frame of mind on the convention.
It would be real nice if it was Friday, Saturday.
I saw
also,
Mike Tate had a long post about that, and I couldn't have agreed more that and I like, he wasn't mean about it. He was like, look, people wanted to try it. I think we should say we tried it and we need to go back.
I agree.
That's my 2 cents. My 2 cents. I don't know. I'm happy to talk about that after the commercial break if you are, but let's see. What did you have any other thoughts on the convention? because I know you're very, very tied up with the election. But
Yeah.
anything else stick out to you?
Yeah, just it was great to see people. But yeah, I mean, I definitely appreciate the,
Mm-hmm.
the Friday, Saturday, and also just generally finding ways to make the convention more accessible for people because it's expensive
Mm-hmm.
for folks, and it's something that is not necessarily accessible if you can't get off of work, if you don't work a typical, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 that gives you paid time off. If you are a single parent and you don't have childcare, it can be difficult to go, and we want to make sure that this is an event that is as accessible to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Festival wise, okay. So,
but we do have some royalty in the family now. However, our niece Everett, Joe's sister's oldest, who is 6.5, won her age group of the Polish Little Miss Polish Fest pageant.
Aw.
So we have royalty in the family.
Aw, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And her younger sister was third place in her age group.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So besides Summerfest, are there any other fests that are musts for you?
I mean, German Fest. The Zapecki crew is similarly engaged in German Fest the way they are with Polish Fest. So
Sure.
Joe will be there, grilling up brats and sausages at the German club stand, as he always does. So we'll definitely do that and have some Summerfest plans too. My sister and her crew are coming up next weekend to go to Summerfest with us.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
Are you still being absolutely assaulted by tree pollen or whatever spring allergies are hitting everybody up here?
Not as bad, but I think that I am going to end up with, a bad headache today, just because of the I am really affected by the changes in pressure when the weather shifts fast.
Yeah.
So I mean, yesterday it was 90 degrees, and today it's going to be 70, and it's raining. So I fear a headache coming on because of that, but hopefully that won't be the case.
I hope not. Okay, sounds good. All right, we got 1 minute. I'll come get you then. In today's edition of our daily newsletter, sign up for it at upnorthnewswi.com. We've got a story on the Wisconsin Center for Dairy Research as part of our June Dairy Month coverage. All kinds of ways that scientists look at having an impact on the quality, the texture, the flavor of cheese, a cheese's shelf life, marketability, and more. So learn about that. Learn specifically about Colby cheese part of one of the many that were invented right here in Wisconsin. Also, an article about Door County fish boils. We're getting to that season as well. And then up on our website, several stories that you should be checking out as well, including 9 Wisconsin businesses staffed by people living with disabilities, and a recap of some of the best fly fishing spots in Wisconsin. All of that and more on our website, upnorthnewswi.com. Remember, if you can't listen to us live, you can pod this program. Listen to us anytime on demand. Head over to Spotify or Apple and subscribe to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Time for our climate check with political strategist Melissa Baldoff, who also had a busy weekend at the state Democratic Convention, where her hub's Joe Zepecki will join us tomorrow and talk about the campaign for state party chair. As usual, everybody puts on a unified face for Devin Remaker, but Joe could not have been more gracious in thanking Devin and William Garcia. And Melissa, I think you'd probably add a special thank you to all the folks who helped back Joe during his campaign. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And yes, thank you so much to everybody who, supported Joe, of course, but also just everybody who was able to show up and attend the convention. It was a really lovely weekend. And it was, a fun and different experience for me, having been to so many of these as somebody who was a staff person for WisDems and helping to put on the convention for a number of years, and then attending them with various bosses or candidates, clients over the years, and so this was my first one, just kind of going to, but not really just going to, because I was there with my husband running for party office. So it was a little bit different experience all around, but still a good one.
Yeah, very much so. And I had forgotten, and I've done this a couple of times now, showing my age, but the convention moved to a Saturday, Sunday format recently. Well, I don't know how recently, but I was used to it being a Friday, Saturday thing. And I will take note that former state party chair Mike Tate had a post the other day about that, this was an interesting experiment, but maybe we should revisit the Friday, Saturday format. I'm not going to say one is right or wrong. I don't know if it's preference or logistics or whatever you want to call it. But if it was up to me, I'd still make it more of a Friday, Saturday thing. I don't know if you notice any difference in terms of turnout and, who's able to make it.
Significant turnout difference. So there were, less than 1,000 votes cast for party chair at this convention. And the last time, 10 years ago, the last time there was a very hotly contested party chairs race, there were like 13 or 1,400 votes cast. So it was a significant drop off. And there was also a big drop off in the number of delegates that, registered versus who voted. So, I agree with Mike Tate that it's, an opportunity to look at, did the old format work better? I know that part of the reason people in the first place wanted to switch to Saturday and Sunday was just concerns maybe about, is that easier for people, than trying to take Friday off of work? But, I think that there's, good points on both sides. Like you said, it's something to look at. I would also say it's something to look at if there are virtual options for attendance, if there are ways that people can, maybe vote for party chair, at their, congressional level caucus. So, I just think there's a lot we can talk about as a party to be more inclusive, to make this more accessible, because, going away for a weekend in the Dells over Father's Day weekend is not cheap. And, we want to bring in more people. And, if you can't afford to go stay at a resort or a hotel nearby for the weekend, you're priced out of going. If you're maybe somebody who doesn't work, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 job, and you have to work on the weekends, then you're not able to go. If you're a single parent who doesn't have anyone to watch your kids so you can go, those are all things that make it put up a barrier to people being able to participate in the process. And as Democrats, we believe in making our party more accessible to everybody. And if we want to bring in more people and get them as a part of the process, I think it's worth conversations.
From Ardith on Facebook, I was sorry to see Joe come up short, but I hope you two will continue to be very visible because I think you are the future of Wisconsin fair and honest government. That was nice of you, Ardith. Thank you for
Well,
putting
that was
that
very
up.
kind to hear. Thank you so much, Ardith.
And not everybody from the family could be a part of the convention because there was split allegiances. There were people that had to get over to Polish Fest, but for good reason, I hear.
Yes, absolutely. So usually our family is at Polish Fest, and usually quite a number of Joe's family is working at Polish Fest. And this year we have royalty in the family. I am so proud of our niece Everett, who is a Little Miss Polish Fest princess. We were so sad that we were not able to be there in person to cheer her on in her pursuit of the crown. But other family was there to support her, cheer her on. We got to see video and are so proud of her and her sister Micah, who was also a runner-up in her age group. So we're very proud of our little Polish princesses and look forward to celebrating Everett's reign alongside her and being at other festivals with the family over the summer.
That is just wonderful, and I do believe German Fest is another big one that you and Joe like to attend.
Absolutely. So anyone who wants to see Joe again, who likes what they've heard and seen from Joe Zepecki, can come find him at German Fest, where he will be, grilling brats.
Yes, again, July 25th, 26th, 27th. So be on the lookout for that. We were talking with Earl Ingram in our last segment about all Summerfest and all the other festivals all summer long in the Milwaukee area. You really do want to check it out. Let's turn our attention to what's happening in politics. And this one's a little unusual because, obviously, in these climate check segments, we do want to talk about the virtues of things like the Inflation Reduction Act and the tax credits that are going to create a whole new generation of clean energy jobs. So I'm not diminishing those in any way, shape, or form when I set it up this way, Melissa, to say the House Trump big bloated boondoggle of a budget bill took out a lot of those credits. And also, of course, would do tremendous damage to Medicaid and all these other essential services. Now the bill's over in the Senate, and Senate Republicans there are not at all chagrined about what they're hearing about cuts to Medicaid and other vital programs. In fact, they added more cuts onto Medicaid and things like that, but they did salvage in their bill some of the green energy tax credits, which really tells you something about their priorities. Yes, it's good for the climate, it's good for all that, but they actually made deeper cuts to Medicaid so that they could preserve some of these clean energy tax credits. It just says something about priorities these days, but I guess we'll take out the good news, take away the good news from it, that these tax credits, have some life support again to create new jobs in Wisconsin and elsewhere.
Yes, but I don't want to give them too much credit here because
right.
I don't want to say this is good news. I'm going to just say this is slightly worse news.
Yes.
Slightly less worse news. Yeah, slightly less worse news. So they did make some improvements to the House version, but they are still making very significant cuts to solar, wind, and other incentives here. So I would say this is definitely falling short of being supportive of clean energy tax credits. But, there are still some Senate Republicans talking about it. And there's still a little bit of time for some movement. And that's why we need people to keep talking to their senators and their members of Congress, because there is still opportunity to make changes here, which I think is the biggest takeaway people should have, that their voices and their advocacy have made a difference so far and can continue to do so. we've got some time. I mean, things are moving. There's that self-imposed July 4th deadline, but there is not a whole lot of room left between now and then for Republicans to meet that deadline. It's, looking more and more likely that they won't make it. So either way, though, the urgency is real, that we need folks reaching out and talking about this and talking about this publicly. What we're seeing from the Senate version is that they still would be phasing out these tax credits. They would just do it a little bit more slowly,
right?
Which is slightly good news. That people would have more time,
yeah.
Right? But it really does fall short of giving people the ability to take advantage of these credits and improve their resilience, save money, and boost our economy.
And by the way, just to show that they are still almost entirely in lockstep with Trump's priorities, the EV incentives that are meant to move the U.S. away from fossil fuels, those would be gutted even more rapidly under the Senate bill. So, it is really a case of self-interest where they see something that we've talked about in this segment before, that a lot of the clean energy jobs being created thanks to these tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act are actually happening in red states and in red districts at a far greater rate than in districts and states that have Democratic elected officials. And so they're seeing the thing that is, most narrowly in their self-interest and saying, oh, well, we're good with those after all, I guess. But I mean, that's the only reason. It has nothing. There's nothing altruistic about this whatsoever.
No, of course not. With that, of course not. There's nothing here that's doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. The motivation to do the right thing would be to, absolutely protect themselves and their interests. But if we can get something positive out of that. That selfishness, I'll take it, right? If the outcome is that we get the right policy, whatever the motivation is, I'll take it. But it's it's not the ideal way to get this done.
No, our theme today: less worse. That's
right.
Sometimes you take what you can get. Melissa Baldoff, thank you so much, and we will talk again real soon.
All right, sounds.
All right. Thank you so much. Coming up, a local update is next for some of you, followed by Matt Nair on Air with Dr. Kristen Lyerly joining in at about 9:30. For those of you hanging here, we will wrap up the program with some Western and Northern Wisconsin news headlines with James Kelly right here in Chippewa Falls. And tomorrow, Todd Alba, Chad Holmes, Sean O'Malley, Joe Zepecki. Remember, you can follow me over at upnorthnewswi.com. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. There we go. How's James?
Oh, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Let's see. Where all were there protests besides Eau Claire?
Well, they had the one up in Chippewa Falls, I think a couple hours afterwards. Okay. I just stopped by that one. And then there was Menominee and Superior, Rice Lake, Ashland, all over the place.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. Good. And you doing anything fun for the weekend coming up?
We'll see. Sometimes
we'll see.
It seems like every weekend something or other has been popping up that's like, oh, well, I guess I can go cover that.
Well, maybe not this weekend. The heat index is going to be 100, 101, something like that. So
yeah, I don't operate well in that kind of heat, that kind of sun. Not for me.
How's the air conditioning in that building there?
The air conditioning is actually quite good in this building. As you see,
okay.
I'm even wearing a hoodie today, even though it's already 70-something degrees out.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
yeah. It's always like it. I have to reset it in the morning down like 10 degrees from like 80. So by the time I actually like start feeling it, like, oh, it's actually kind of chilly in here now.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. I think actually I'm going to start with the solar project.
Sure.
Just because Melissa and I were actually going to cover it, and then I saw it on your list, and so we'll kind of make that transition. and then we'll get into some of these other ones, and we'll wrap up with goats.
Sounds good.
You never go wrong wrapping up with goats.
No.
All right. Sounds good. See you in a bit. All right, let's visit with Civic Media reporter James Kelly in our Chippewa Falls office, which is not too far from the Lake Wissota studios, and with air conditioning that is definitely up to the challenge of this season. That looks like a hoodie you got on there, Mr. Kelly. So you are ready for the upcoming heat wave here.
Yeah, and just in case you want to do a remote show on the lake again, just it's quick drive for me.
Absolutely. I'm going to be checking out the pontoon later today. We're going to start with a solar project, which Melissa and I were actually going to talk about in our climate check segment that XL Energy is working on, but you've got an update on it as well, so I thought we'd make that the first thing for your segment here. Tell us about this 10 Mile Creek solar project in St. Croix County.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about this solar project is that it's the first one that I really remember seeing strong opposition to when it was first announced. A few thousand people signed a petition against it, saying they were concerned about, the effects it could have on the environment and wildlife. But they held a public meeting recently, XL Energy, to announce that they had gotten the leases from all the nearby private landowners that they needed to build the project. So now they're planning on submitting their application to the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin by the end of the year, which could take a year to a year and a half to review. So it's not exactly on the way. It's not opening anytime soon. But the goal is to replace the energy production that's going to be lost when a coal-fueled power plant near Stillwater closes in 2028.
Oh, what is that? The King, the name of it, I forget. It's a name for somebody.
Yeah, the Allen S. King power plant.
There we go, Allen S. King. I always thought, was it for the old comedian? No, not that Allen King, a different one. And so that thing will be decommissioned, and so it leads to the solar project. So, I mean, are they thinking that's going to be like an even swap there? Is the project going to be that big?
Well, the project is right now estimated to power nearly 150,000 homes in the area. The first phase of construction would bring 300 megawatts, and they're also kind of thinking about maybe moving up the battery storage phase of the project to phase 1. So we'll see. It's still a couple years to go. They still need to get approval from the state. There's still some local opposition to it, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be enough opposition to prevent this project from going forward.
Okay. Obviously, it was a very busy weekend with all of the No Kings protests that were going on. It sounds like you got to at least a couple of them.
Yeah, I hit Eau Claire and Chippewa Falls. I passed through. Eau Claire was certainly bigger. Early on when I was there, the organizers were estimating that there were a little over 2,000 people. And by the time I came back after the actual march, they were saying, we're thinking closer to 3,000 now. Wow. Even Sydney Greening, the woman who organized it with Chippewa Valley Indivisible, said even the law enforcement authorities called and said, well, we got a few more than we thought, didn't we?
They did. We heard from her. Selena Heller played some sound from her on Monday morning about it just exceeding, her expectations. And again, the friendliness, the positivity of the crowd. They were there to protest something, but they did so in a manner that was not at all a strain on law enforcement or anything like that. It really went as they'd hoped and better.
Yeah, I saw a few minor counter protesters, not even really counter protesters. I mean, I saw one woman kind of hanging outside the side of her truck, waving a Trump 2024 flag. I was like, okay, if that's like the worst that counter protesting is going to get today, I'm going to just call this an all around great event for everybody.
I think it worked out well. Our Trump supporter got to blow off some steam that way, so that's just fine. And those weren't the only events in western or northwest Wisconsin by any measure.
No, we had Menominee, Ashland, I believe Hudson had one in River Falls, Rice Lake, Superior. They were all over northwestern Wisconsin. Obviously, couldn't travel to all of them, unfortunately, as much as I would like to.
No, but you could definitely tell on social media, folks were posting from everywhere, and it was very much a unifying event for folks. Let's talk about some school districts up in our neck of the woods here. We had, of course, one of the finance folks from the Eau Claire School District on earlier in the day talking about the fiscal challenges that they have, and the ways that you can work with that at a small district level is to maybe consolidate positions, maybe do some job sharing. And so what's happening with a couple of districts up north?
Yeah, so a committee for the Spooner Area School District actually recently approved this plan. It'll have to go to the full school board still. But essentially, the plan is to share 4 positions with the Northwood School District and the Shell Lake School District. Shell Lake, also another one of those schools that failed to pass a referendum on the April ballot. So they're having their own budget struggles. It would include 3 administrative positions from Northwood. That's Director of People Services, a Finance Manager, and Food Service Director. And I think the most interesting one is a physics teacher from Shell Lake. So we're getting to the point where schools are now sharing teachers to handle their budget issues. And, it's a unique solution to a problem that probably shouldn't exist.
It shouldn't exist, and it's going to mean reduced opportunities for some kids who have an interest in some fields or the other, and again reflects the fiscal realities of what we're dealing with today. All right, let's close on a lighter note, and it's always a lighter note when I get to talk about goats, and especially if they're tackling buckthorn or some of the other invasive plants that are out there. And I can't explain my fascination with maybe getting a goat someday. I'd have to explain just the level of animosity I have toward the buckthorn that's growing along my property line. But in Superior, they're giving the goats a go.
Yeah, they are giving the goats a go. At Billings Park, they have a problem with buckthorn, which is an invasive species. So they've just fenced off a certain area and they let the goats loose for about a week and a half. Apparently, the goats like to eat the buckthorn. It's better for the soil, better for the environment overall, better for other wildlife in the area than maybe pesticides or other removal methods of this invasive species. But it's nice to see the goats being put to work.
And the before and after is going to be striking because, again, you get whatever algorithm, your social media, you get what you get in return. You click on a couple of goat videos, and next thing you know, I'm getting all these videos of before and after when the goats are penned in properly to eat just the things that you want them to eat. And it is amazing what they get done. They've done this in Wausau and other places as well. James Kelly following all this for us from Chippewa Falls. Thank you, James. Have a great day.
Have a good one.
All right, good to see you. Nice to have everybody here for one more edition of these mornings powered by Up North News here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Matt Nair on Air is next with Dr. Kristen Lyerly coming up at 9:30. My thanks to today's guests and an invitation to have you join us tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., right here, Up North. There we go. All right, live streamers, have a great day.